Okay. Right. So welcome to the next workshop in an iteration of workshops that we've been running to define fair indicators for combined models and combined archives. Irinia and I are working on this project for a while now, and as you know, we are currently on an USC funding and get some support to actually develop the indicators themselves, but also the guidelines to describe how the indicators work, and also a tool to do the evaluation semi-automatically. And what we would like to do today is first give you a brief update of the things that happened since the last meeting, which was combined last year in autumn. And we would also do some, or like you to help us with some more feedback and some help. And we'll just tell you what the tasks are that are on our agenda, and we'll see what you're up to. Okay, so the discussions actually started a while ago, also in the context of the reproducibility issues that we had with models. And in 2022, we had a paper that described the challenges that we still see in the combined community, but also in systems, biology systems, model systems, medicine as a whole, with respect to adhering to FAIR principles. And one of the issues that we saw is that it's difficult to reuse models without really knowing how good they are. So that was one of the perspectives that people took, particularly for clinical applications. So we thought about good quality measures for models, and then started discussions among others with the Colomoto people and the SysMod people. And one idea that we had is to say, okay, we could support a fair evaluation of models. So at least then we know they're better reusable and probably more reproducible. And that could also be an indicator for the quality of a model. So it could foster the broader use of computational modeling in fields like biomedicine or clinical research. And then we already had a few meetings in the past, combines and harmonies, and with various people, various contributors. And then we applied for this EOC grant that allowed us to organize a session at Combine last year, and to have pizza today, and also to actually employ two software developers to support the tool implementation. Just a brief recap from Combine. We sat together at Combine in Berlin in a very long session, and we went through the first version of FairIndicators that Irinia and I had come up with, and tried to evaluate them using different models. We had a curated and non-curated group model from biomodels and a curated, non-curated from PMR. And we tried to apply the FAIR indicators and discussed if these work, if there are things missing, things too detailed, too complicated. We got a lot of feedback from Combine, and we tried to incorporate this in the next version of the FAIR indicators, which we put on GitHub. And we'll share the link with you later on if you want to have a look. I don't know the link yet. So all the indicators are single issues on the GitHub repository, and you can actually comment on them, try them out, give feedback, and we hope that we can consolidate them so that we can come to common agreement that these are the indicators we want to work with. For the hackathon this year, the plan was, and still is, to present you a first version of a fair evaluation tool that we're developing at the moment. And we would also like to do a few more examples of manual assessment for the different types of models that we already worked with at the Combine 2022. So the development of the tool has started 1st of April, so it's very very new, and we have two supporters, two developers who support us in this project, Tom and Francois. Francois is on site and Tom is online. So we have both of them here to discuss about the tool, the usability, maybe features that you would like to see, feedback that you want to give. And both will be working on this tool development until June. And we hope to have a prototype, well, a bit more than a prototype running by summer, that can then hopefully be reused in the different communities for fair evaluation. Part of the ERC is also to disseminate the project idea, not only inside Combine, but also across the RDA landscape. And there's a lot of activity. I'll show you on the next slide a few of the conferences that we attended and meetings. So we've been quite active, mostly Irinia, I have to say, presented the project, and with the project also combined several conferences and workshops. And we have a few more coming up this year. And this slide is just to show you that the ERC grant is really a good opportunity also for our community to reach out to neighboring communities using the FAIR topic, but also there's a lot of discussions about how to encode metadata, how to standardize data. So it's really interesting to be in a scientific exchange with other people from the ERC projects. Yes, I already mentioned what is on our agenda at the moment. So that the tool development is really the main task for the next months. We really aim to finalize the tool that is usable at the end in different contexts. So either as a standalone tool, but maybe also as a tool that you could integrate into curation pipelines, for example. And the tool is one hand, the one thing that we need to work on, and that's for the moment pretty straightforward, lots of tasks, and we just want to go ahead and implement them. But we also want to seek a community level agreement on the FairIndicators. So that's where we hope to get a bit more of your time and feedback with respect to the actual list of indicators. We also want to develop a small guideline how to use the indicators, and we want to develop training materials that we can give out to people to help them work with the indicators and the actual tool. Yes, and then the usual scientific work of preparing the manuscripts, specifications, and tool documentation on our agenda. With respect to the challenges, the community involvement is really challenging because despite the fact that we all know well, I think most of us agree that FAIR and verification are useful tasks. They are not what is at the core of everyone's work. So usually this should work as automatic as possible, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on the verification of our assessment. We just want it, to run and give a score basically. So it's hard to keep people involved, but workshops like the one today are a good chance to get in touch with you. So if you want to spend more time on this project, we are still meeting every second week on Fridays in a Zoom call to discuss the project progress, and you're really welcome to join. Just sign up via the website or drop Irinia and I a message or talk to Francois. Any help is really welcome. Yes, and there's a website link as well. We can also post it on Slack in a moment if you want to get more information, look at the indicators, or as I said, if you want to get involved. We brought some pictures from the meetings that we already had. So they were on the list on the previous slide on the left-hand side. That was the ERC Symposium, a really nice outreach event to talk to other communities who also care a lot about verification. We also gave a talk at ICSB last year, and then there was a combined breakout that we had on the fair evaluation, and you see the different groups working, who were working on the different models and trying out our indicators list, which was an Excel file at the time, but now we're trying to work with the GitHub issues, as I mentioned. Okay, so that's the state of things for now. And that's all I wanted to say, actually, as an introduction. Now I would like to hand over to Francois, who will give you a bit more information on the status of software development, and then we can discuss what we want to do in the remaining time to make some progress.
Thank you. Also, do you want to go up to the front?
Yeah,
Sure. Here. All right.
I'm actually checking now if I can share. Thing.
Are you? You're not on the Zoom, right?
No, I have to join again.
Okay. Oh, okay, the restart. Yeah. Zoom has been a little flaky. So
It's actually Mac, which did not give the
permissions. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Should be back.
Yep, you are on connecting to audio. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Next.
So good morning, everyone. So the idea is that I worked for the last month with on the development of an evaluation tool. The goal being to assess how assess the fairness of combined archives and combined models. There are multiple goals with the tool. With this tool, the main thing is providing the indicators on how fair the resource is and helping assess the global fairness of the archive and models. The second one is hopefully to automate the assessment. At the moment, the assessment is done manually by answering questions about your resource. But we hope that the next step is actually to automate a large series hopefully of these assessments, for example, using the fair test package in Python. And the last goal is to prepare models by improving their fairness, preparing them to faster creation processes, for example, in biomodel. The indicators themselves, so regarding fair indicators, we can roughly split them in evaluation of the data and evaluation of the metadata. And to be very brief, we simply duplicated both these groups. We evaluate the model as a CNML or SDML file. We evaluate the OMEX archive. We evaluate the model metadata, so the SEDML file, and evaluate the archive metadata, the manifest.xml in the archive. That leaves us with around 84 indicators. The whole list is available on GitHub as issues. The GitHub is actually public, so the idea is that if you have comments or issues with the current definitions, it's open to everyone to participate. So the tool itself is relatively simple. You have to query an evaluation by filling this form here on the right. So you answer specific questions about the resource you want to evaluate. Do you want to evaluate simply the model or the complete omics archive? Is there metadata associated with this file? What is the format of the files? Is it SBML, STLML? Is there, what's the format of the metadata? And is your model part of biomodels or the PMR repositories? And based on these answers, you get the list of indicators. Some of them may be pre-filled. These indicators, the assessments of these indicators are divided into 3 sections. First, it may be, as I mentioned, pre-filled based on your input. So let's say, for example, there is no archive to evaluate, then in this case, the assessments related to the archive will automatically be disabled because there is nothing to answer yet. It's also the case for what we call dependent indicators. For example, if there is no link related to external resources, the assessments corresponding to that feature is failed. But also all the assessments that ask for details regarding these things. For example, if let's say are these links detailed regarding what is on the other side of the URL, thing like that, these will automatically be failed also because there is no links to evaluate. The second type is the computed assessments. These are not available yet, but the idea is that once you start the session, a list of the assessments will start on the server side and automatically answer the question for you. If needed, you may override the answer, simply because for some reason, maybe the assessment is not correct. And the last is the manual assessments, simply because we were not able to automate them yet, or because they are not related to the other assessments or to the pre-session form. And in this case, you simply give an answer. And based on all these answers, the different assessments are scored. 1 if the assessment is successful, alpha points if it's partially successful, if some improvements are possible, and 0 if the assessment is failed. It's also possible to answer not applicable, or it's not here in the slide, but not answered if for any reason you prefer not to answer the question. And the last step is actually simply summing all the assessment scores. For the list of assessments, you have the global score for the big jauge here, and a list of scores, for example, for only essential, what we call essential indicators or non-essential indicators. And if you answered some of the assessments are not applicable, then you also have the score on the subset of applicable only assessments.
Is that a straight, is the overall score just a straight average of everything, or are the essential ones weighted more than the non-essential ones? Or?
Yeah, it's a straight average. Yes, there is no, at least at the moment, there is no what's the word, ponderation.
Well, no weighting
what
of
is essential,
one,
what is important.
yeah. And also, like, is it a weighting of those 5 numbers, or is it a number of average of each question?
No, so it's the global average. So the main score here is the global average on everything.
Right. I was just wondering if it was divided by, like, if you have 10 essential questions and 50 non-essential questions, does non-essential get weighted by 50 basically? Because each one is.
So the global score would be the.
Is it divided by 60?
Divided by 25. The essential would be the score of the 10 essentials divided by 10, and the non-essential would be the scores of the 15 non-essentials divided by 50.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's a start. I started on in start of April. So at the moment, there is only self-assessments. You do not have to provide any resource to assess, you just have to answer questions. So at the moment, you cannot provide a URL towards the biomodel or PMR resource, and you cannot either give directly the file to assess. By extension, there is no computed assessments, only the the pre-filled assessments and the manual ones. It's also possible to export and import the current session. Simply, let's say that some tasks may be long, actually, I don't know, we didn't test yet, but if some tasks take more than an hour to actually evaluate, we cannot ask the user to stay in front of the tab for 1 hour. So the idea is simply you can export either with the session ID or the complete JSON of the session and come back later to see the results. And yes, of course, at the moment for manual assessments, it's actually possible to get the score of the session. So the project, the tool itself actually involved quite an amount of people, thanks to Irinia and Dagmar, which are the coordinators. The main front-end design was done by Waltemath. The content was implemented by Tom, backend by myself. So I'm here if you have concerns or complaints about how things are done. I'm here. And thanks, of course, to Venkata as the scientific advisor from the tool. The main project website is available there. There is a GitHub, and the indicators are already given here. So the tasks we would like help with. Here they are. So the first one is to finalize the documentation regarding the FairIndicators. So comments, any issues, complaints whatsoever about the indicators at the moment. Improving the descriptions. Yeah, here is a link I'll share in the Slack and in the Zoom meetings later. The Fair evaluation tool itself is actually available at the moment. I opened the port of my laptop for the backend and for the front end. It's my laptop only, so I'm sorry for any lag. It may crash at any moment. And if I lose battery, then I cannot put this available for the whole day. Yeah, the idea is to provide any feedback. You can open issues on the GitHub. Would like help, for example, on the development for the URL assessment, so retrieving the metadata and data from biomodel and PMR, and help also to actually implement the automated assessments themselves. If anyone has experience in that, I would be happy to hear about it and get help for it. And lastly, so we noted they finalized the dependencies between indicators. So I mentioned it briefly during this presentation. If there is an assessment saying, is there external resources links? And there is an assessment about, are these links described correctly in the metadata? If there is no link, of course, there is no description. So we say in this case that the second assessment is dependent on the first one, and we would like help on finalizing these dependencies and formalizing them in the document that is also shared here. Thank you for your attention. I'll actually share everything now. Yeah, let's discuss.
All right, thank you. So, did you say that some of the background is Python?
Yes, I didn't say. Through the backend is Fast API.
Okay.
And the front end is Vue.js.
Okay. Excuse me.
And for the what's the word? For the automated tests, I have a prototype framework, which is combining Redis as a broker for the tasks and Celery for the running tasks themselves.
Okay. As it happens right now, we are like fixing all of the biomodels. So, and we're doing this in sort of script form, like we're like running Python scripts on everything and testing things. So something like this would be useful as a script and less useful as like a interactive, like click on things, because we
Yes.
have like over 1,000 to go through, right?
We can do a script actually. So give me a second. In my code at the moment, what I wrote is not a standard input, but the methods would expect the task name, the task model, simply to actually correctly associate the results with the correct session and with the correct user query, and the data that needs to be evaluated as a dictionary. So in this case, the script could simply get this metadata, evaluate, and return the final
The assessments.
assessments, results, yes, what I call the task status. Links should be working also for remote users. We do not need to be actually connected to the same network for it to work. Sorry? Might be a bit slower, yes.
Can I put those in the Combine Slack also?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Francois. And just a quick thing. So we also prepare like a couple of options for working during this hackathon. And I can share my screen if you want. You 1 second. Okay, it's actually from here and slideshow. You see slides in full, or
Yes.
you see? Okay.
Yes.
Works.
Thank you. So basically, we were mentioning a couple of options in the slides presented by Dagmar, and one of the options indeed will be to work on the fair evaluation tool, either to implement, either to have a feedback, either to have suggestions, and so on. So it's everything is on GitHub. We have public repositories. Everyone is very welcome, and we acknowledge all the support. So this option 1 of working is with Francois, Tom, and Ron. And there is also a questionnaire that we invite you to complete regarding the experience with the tool. So if you find at some point helpful, what you improve, and so on. So it's kind of like to collect a little bit more structured feedback. And of course, if there are any suggestions. The second option, well, whatever, option 2, group coordinated by Dagmar, would be to finalize the documentation on FairIndicators. So what we did, as we mentioned, we had the FairIndicators that were initially used for tabular data and metadata. We adapted to Combine Archive. So basically, we have Combine Archive, Combine models, and then metadata of archive, metadata of a model. But of course, they need to be how to say, finalized. So if the description is clear, if there are any questions, if the description needs to be updated, and so on, because at this will be used as input for the community level guideline. And the third option is to finalize the dependencies between indicators. So basically, what we did during the series of hackathons in March, we had those 5 groups of models where we ran manual assessment, and then we started looking to, well, we centralized the results, and we realized that there are some dependencies between indicators. So for example, if the indicator specifying that there is no separate file of a metadata, so that is marked as 0 or not assessed, of course, all the indicators related to the metadata file of the archive or of a model can be semi-automatically marked as 0. If that was 1, doesn't imply that the rest are 1, but we are trying to reduce a little bit the number of indicators for the assessment. And we noticed that actually there are some, so for example, even also there are some indicators that can be filled automatically by the platform. So for example, if a model, if archive is hosted by biomodels of a PMR, especially the indicators on the license can be filled automatically from the platform. So, but we need to have these requirements for the tool, and we will try to finalize this task also tonight. And then I see that Dagmar also added some questions here. So what do you want to do today? What do you need to get started? And if there are any comments, and I think there is something also on the bottom. Yeah. And then we will basically we'll decide now on how to work and how are the groups we can work in, of course, in breaking sessions. And we will come together 20 minutes before the session ends. And of course, we will break when the pizza arrives. Suggestions? And perhaps because with a, I can leave it for a couple of minutes, for example, but perhaps, and if I go here, it was a question on the scoring. So basically on the, just an example here for a COVID-19 model from biomodels. And we did the manual assessment. So basically in the template where we have indicators, you see here, right? So with the priorities on, we worked on this with also in the previous meetings, workshops. At the end, there is a total score. So where all the indicators, so do not consider the priority of the indicators, essential, non-essential. So essential, useful, or useful or important. So it's the total score. Then there is a score that looks only to the essential indicators. And then there is a total score which considers only the non-essential indicators. And then sometimes we also can have a not applicable assessment. In this case, wasn't, you see that not applicable is 0 for all the cases, but there are some cases when, for example, the tool or the platform wouldn't permit something. And it's this is also separated. So in the end, they are kind of like around 9 different values, but and depends on who, when is interpreting the results, we can say, okay, this was scored very well on the essential, or for example, if we improve a couple of things, it will go most on the non-essential part. But for the moment, I think, I don't know, Francois, I think we focus on getting first one score, and then we will, of course, have detailed scoring part. I think it was in the question earlier.
Oh yeah, I was wondering about what average meant.
Yeah, here is actually we count and we divide it by essential, and at some point, of course, we counted essential, we divide it, but of course we also remove not applicable. However, it's in the same thing because this is 0.
Right.
So going back to the question from here. Sorry. Yeah.
What do you want to do?
So for me, it would be really nice if we could work a little bit on the tool, because that's that would be nice to benefit from your experiences and feedbacks. And one of the questions that we had is, which of the indicators can we score automatically? So that would also be interesting to see where could we maybe switch from manual assessment to automatic or semi-automatic, because it's difficult to know. We have to think about one indicator after the other and see if we come up with an idea to determine them automatically, and then how to do that exactly. So I assume their help would also be much appreciated. The option 2 is, I mean, it's also necessary, but you don't necessarily need to sit together and do it in one room. There's not so much discussion. It's more like someone has to do the job, I guess.
Would it be helpful to have just a naive user, i.e. me, like just try it, the tool, like as far as the evaluation goes?
Sure.
Yeah, and just complain
non-ending stream of complaints.
Go ahead.
Yes, that's all we said. So
That's right.
you have Francois in the room and Ron and Thomas
Yeah.
also online, I think. Maybe not the whole time, but at least now.
Of your links, is one of them directly to the tool, or was that?
Yeah, so the front end link goes to
Front
the
end
tool. The back
okay.
end is actually the documentation of the different what the front end is using.
I got quick, I checked the front end one.
Yes.
Is it possible, or it looks like you ask questions first of
Yes.
the model?
Yes.
Is it possible to load the model and automatically process it and then ask the user any?
Not at the moment,
Okay.
but that's one of the steps that we would implement. We will implement so that you just load the resource, and then actually these questions are not necessary anymore because they will be answered by the resource
Right.
itself.
Okay, all right.
This is a purely self-assessment.
Oh, okay, okay, got it.
So you don't have to upload what.
Oh, so there's nothing to upload.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Ah, okay. Yeah. Okay. Here, let me.
You have to embrace simple information.
Yes.
In looking at the small pen,
Yeah.
and I can see that you've got okay. You have the choice of 1, 0.5, there. By looking at the this one, I identify my just identify what is going to be the
Well, for this one is probably not. The 0.5 is probably not relevant. Yes, it's just here that it's the default answers for everything. We have not separated the possible answers based on the different assessments. Yes, I didn't say that. You can of course just click on any indicators and you get on the right panel the description. So the subgroup for that assessment, you get and let's say a longer description saying what is expected for that assessment to pass.
But maybe this the problem, the feedback we always get. You want to icon, especially on rather than expect people.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's true.
Otherwise, also,
No, go for it.
again, just any indicator. If I select not applicable, I can see that my score goes down. Why my score goes down? It's applicable.
The global score does, because the not applicable are taken into account for that one, but the applicable subscores will not move.
Okay.
So does that mean that you think that if something is non-applicable, then that is a worse model?
It's this fair.
And so, I mean, yeah, like basically is it, if I don't have any links going out, then that's not as good a model as something that does have links going out.
That's worth the debate.
Yeah.
I think also that yeah, I think that's worth discussing it, but
If I may say something here, it's not necessarily about the quality of the model, it's about the fairness. And the second thing, usually we do not necessarily compare one resource with another, even from fairness point of view. So we compare our resource with our resource in the future, or our resource now with a resource in past. So verification is a process, it's not like something a target. It's just kind of like, let's see how we stand now, let's see where we can improve, that in 6 months, for example, if we do some work, we will advance a little bit from a fairness point of view. Or let's see what was before and let's see what we have now and if we achieve something. So for example, one of the issues that came from the assessment, from manual assessment, it was that sometimes modelers, or not trying to generalize, but sometimes, let's say, modelers do not apply, do not include, let's say, a separate metadata file. And that is extremely important, because only having that one will help someone to how do you say, to get more hands or more information about the model, the archive itself. So what I'm saying is it's just a matrix for our model and archive to get the visibility, but not to compare between us. This is what I'm saying.
That's not going to be how people use it. Like, it's going to instantly be used to compare things. Like, if you give people a number between 0 and 1, people will want a higher number, and they will say, like, if something has a higher number than another one, they will say that means this is better. That's just what they're going to do. If you want them to not do that, that's either going to take a lot of like dissemination and like, or you're going to need to do something and like have it not a number and have it like some sort of, I don't know, touchy-feely words or something. Like, I don't know, like, you're gonna have to use words instead of numbers if you want people to not compare them one to another, I think.
Yeah.
Even then.
Indeed, it's a little bit of both, indeed, as you said. It's an education also for the communities, for the users, to not kind of to compete for having a higher score on fairness and so on, is to see a little bit behind that score. It's something that helps, as I said, not to evaluate anything, or even kind of like the curator at some point, for example, integrating, so or running the fairness, and then they say, okay, this is something we can improve on the essential part, or we can improve on the non-essential part, or let's see where we stand now running our whole, all of us tool. And then if I add these minors, because that will come from the guidelines, we will say, okay, in order to achieve kind of like better accessibility, please, or even findability, please include a separate file, metadata, or manifest XML, or whatever format it is, just to have it there, and then will help the user, the community. And so that's why we work also on the guidelines, on the community level guidelines. And indeed, this community level awareness it's time demanding, but there are different initiatives now supporting fairness of research infrastructure, or of a software part. And we are kind of considered also in that not circle, in that area.
Yeah.
So again, you recommend the model metadata be separate from the model file? Is that?
Would be, in a sense, better, because there are some indicators that they say that, for example, if a model or the archive is removed, the user would need someone, let's say the user, right, will need still to have that documented, the metadata file to be available. There are a couple of indicators saying that the metadata is still available once the model or the archive, whatever the data, in our case, data means model and archive, is removed. So
Wait, remove. Sorry, I don't know what you mean by removed.
Remove, for example, if I want to delete the model, I want to delete the archive from somewhere. Let's imagine that it's not necessarily biomodels for the moment or PMR. I just want to delete it from somewhere where I have it. If I don't have like a separate metadata, it will disappear. So it's kind of like I have annotation in the SBML file or a CLML file. All the information from the model will be erased. So it happens also in the, let's say, tabular data sets or traditional data sets. Data can be removed, but then the metadata is available there saying, okay, that was the experiment done by X, Y, and Z at that date, or using this species and so on. And it was removed by Irinia Balaur because she wanted to remove it and had approval and authorization. So this is captured, in a sense, in the metadata file that is separate. What we also, sorry, please.
No, it's fine. My phone buzzed at me. Sorry.
what we also were very happy, and we knew actually this, we anticipated this, but it came also from the manual assessment that we did, that having the models and the archive in the platforms like biomodels and PMR, it helps a lot. So saying that if it was like the model or the archive on my individual laptop or somewhere, people wouldn't, first of all, have access to it and findability and so on, all of these parts. But I'm saying that also the biomodels has the model page. So some parts of the metadata can be taken, extracted from there. And in that case, when we found the model or the archive in biomodels or in PMR, we scored at 0.5. So we didn't give a full 1 in the assessment, like 100%, but we gave something like 0.50%, basically some metadata of a model, some metadata of the archive. It's available in the platform itself. So I'm saying is there are a couple of different flavors of model. If someone wants to keep a model on their own, I don't know, cloud or something, it's fine. At least they will give whatever accessibility, fundability to some group of people. But once it's in these public major repositories, it helps also on scoring our indicators. So it improves the fundability, accessibility at least. And then of course, reusability also with a license. As I said, we have a couple of platform-specific indicators. If you wish, we can. So there is the indicator independence. I think it's the first file shared by Francois. Yeah, but please, Francois, sorry, if you want to do something else, because there we extracted a couple of things, and we can also explain. We can go quickly on those. Explaining.
One of my comments then would be, like, I'm not sure, like I don't see how a situation where if I wanted to delete a file, I wouldn't just delete the whole archive and then the metadata is also gone. Like I'm not imagining a scenario where the metadata is left behind somehow. Like I don't know how that helps. Like if I delete the file from the thing, yeah.
Yeah, actually, you do actually have that situation in FairIndicators, for example, where people publish metadata. I mean, not in the sense of, in a broader sense, right? Like information about the modeling project, the modeler, project duration, maybe even about the model, but they don't publish the code. And I mean, that's happening quite often. I think we have to think about metadata again in a bit. It's not only the ontology links, it's more than that.
Okay. But that's a place where the metadata is actually separately published as opposed to just being in the OMEX file.
Right.
If it's just in the OMEX file, it will live or die with that OMEX file. If you delete the OMEX file, the whole thing's gone, just like the model is gone. It doesn't help to have a separate metadata file unless it's separately published. Or unless it's in some sort of like Git repository or something where there's a Git history. And then you get the model and the metadata together, like everything is like if you have a Git project or any sort of source control thing for your project, then if you had it for a while and then you delete it, you can always go back in the history and find out what it was and whatever the commit message was when you deleted, and that sort of thing. But just having a metadata file inside an OMEX file, I don't think helps persistence. You would have to publish it would have to be separately published, like at the FairIndicators Hub or whatever.
Yes, but then the metadata of archive, it will be given how, where, if not in a manifest XML. You see what I'm saying?
Right, like it has a manifest XML file inside it, right?
Yes, exactly.
So if I just delete the file, then it's all gone, including the manifest.
Yes, because we had a couple of cases when we took the archive, right, the combined archive, and we were looking for metadata. So basically, if we give a machine, I write a script, and I want to access the metadata of archive, and I in purpose put in the script check for the manifest XML and extract all relevant information. If a machine will check automatically the script, they will not find the file. They will say, okay, there is no metadata. It's not fairness. Is not on. It's more. Somehow, okay, it's also for human beings, but for human beings, we already have some capacity to judge, to analyze, but it's more to improve a machine accessibility. So if I want to, I work with 2000 combined archives, and I want to extract which combined archives refer to whatever type of species, human beings or whatever, rat, white rat.
Right.
I put the metadata and I write the script. I download all these 2000 combined archives from the biomodels or PMR or whatever part. I check the metadata. If I can't find the file, for the machine will say, okay, only this 23. However, if another 1900 had the metadata, the XML manifest XML file there, and they specified the species, I would have been able to extract a larger pool. So this is something, as I said, it's a one step.
Yeah, having the metadata there is useful. I do agree.
Yes.
That particular reason of that it helps persistence was surprising to me, because it lives or dies with the omics file itself. It doesn't have a life outside of that. Usually I would have, unless it's separately published. So if you want to score for persistence of metadata, the existence of the file inside the omics file is not going to help that score, but separate publishability would. So if you wanted that as a separate score for like persistence after deletion or something somehow, then I would just make that a separate assessment.
Then, for example, we can change the priority of an indicator if, for example, persistent of a metadata of archive, but for the persistent of a metadata of a model, for example, and this was actually the case with the previous example. So we can delete the model, right? But if we keep the metadata, we will know that the model was whatever, deleted. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes
if you do that, yeah, it's just that I don't see that happening in most situations unless it's the whole thing is set up to do that. Yeah.
Because what happens usually for the metadata.
Ron had a question real quick. Sorry, I don't know. He was too quiet.
There's two different kinds of metadata. One is inline metadata.
Mhm.
Just invented that. Basically meaning it's in the SPML file, in the Salem alpha, or in the
omics file, yeah.
And the other thing is, think of it kind of as a server log, where the omics, SPML, whatever was published, and you still have like the remainings, maybe entered manually or extracted from the omics file, saying you posted
a thing and then I deleted it. Yeah.
Then it was deleted. The file is no longer accessible, but the metadata that you did something and it was there is still accessible and still there.
Right.
Maybe that's the thing where we can have a distinguished.
That's a separate thing, and I think it is probably important if you want to talk about that sort of thing. But yeah, like if it's in GitHub, then it has that information, right? And it's not a metadata file; it's like the actual Git history.
It will be
or a PMR suddenly has that built into the whole thing, like it's committed. You have the Git history and stuff.
I think another example that's with the archive. This thing, right? It's generated things, say,
Oh yeah.
This thing as an archive says, yeah, so for PMR, you could delete the model in the workspace, but the metadata file stays there.
Yeah.
So now if I download an archive of the different, it moves with that metadata.
Right.
Makes something.
Yeah. And that's because you have a system in place that has separates things, and that's different. I will say also the manifest.xml is a required file for Combine Archives. If you have a Combine Archive without a manifest file, then that's no longer a Combine Archive, it's just a zip file, I think. Right? It's the only requirement for a Combine Archive is that the existence of a manifest file.
And about the question from Ron, indeed, when we had that manual assessment, we consider metadata also given in the SBML file. However, in order to have it again as a machine readability and so on, instead of having parsed only a separate metadata file, of course, the script or whatever needs to go a little bit inside to parse the SBML file, to extract the metadata and so on. So someone needs to know little bit more that, okay, some metadata can be given in the SBML. However, in the assessment, we score that as 0.5. So when metadata was given in SBML file, or when metadata was available through the PMR web pages, so repository and journal, and as well as biomodels, we put at 0.5 at least. If it was a model, sorry.
Is there any, so you think, so your assessment, your hypothesis here is that having metadata inside, like saying that this came from a rat, if you say that it came from a rat inside the SBML file, that is less fair than saying that it came from a rat in a separate file?
In theory, yes. In theory, yes, because yes. So basically, this is what I'm saying. Once the SBML file disappears from some reason, is removed, is something, the metadata disappears. It's also removed, and this is.
I would say that so the same thing would be true for everything, but yeah.
If there are two different resources, so separate resources, we can remove the model, and we can say, okay, the model was removed, but in the metadata, we keep this one. The model was removed because it was retracted. It was, I don't know, plagiarism. It was something. I'm just giving the, perhaps a naive situation, but
instructions for making a bomb in it.
Something it was too sensitive, or it was too something, or it was, we just moved it and we deleted, we just change our minds. But that information is kept somewhere. And this is one of the essential indicator actually in the fairness to have, to have.
Okay. It still feels a little odd to me, but okay.
That make other problems, like if I'm working in night shift and setting up a new non-biomodels website and extracting all the metadata from the biomodels, everything which is in there, I would certainly be more fair in your point of view than biomodels, because I just extracted all the metadata from the model files, all that is in there, and store them on my.
I'm just a separate,
It's an hypothetical, I don't know, it's an hypothetical case, Ron, I would say, because again, we don't compare, neither for fairness, we don't compare between the models, but not between the resources, the platform resources. So as I said, we use the score of fairness to compare ourselves. So we want in a sense, the further point is to have a better visibility of a model, to have a better feedback, to have a better, or to improve something towards the reproducibility. And this is one component we are looking and speaking today is from fairness point of view. It's not to compare, as I said, if I have 23 on the fairness and you have 93, doesn't mean that my model is not as good as yours. It's just if I compare now 23 and in 6 months I just I do some minimum part to add the metadata to improve a little bit the description for someone else to be able to reuse it, or first to access it, to find it, to access it, to use it and to reuse it, then it will improve the overall quality perhaps of the model itself.
If you don't think that your fairness score is an indicator of quality, I think what people will want is an indicator of quality. Like because that was one of the first things I think Dagmar said is that in order to improve reusability, you want to know that you have a good model. So like if you have you need to give people a score that says this is a good model.
I want to rephrase my question.
Yeah.
I completely agree with what you're saying. Then I'm a bit confused. What am I comparing? Am I comparing two models, which mean I have two files which I compare? Or do I compare two models that sit in a repository somewhere? So the distinguishing point is, do I distinguish the files, like the bit code on my computer somehow? Or do I distinguish URIs pointing to a certain repository? Because as the way it is coded now, if I got it right, I could have different fairness scores for the same model published in biomodels and in PMR2. Yeah. Am I right?
I think that's true, and I think that actually is reasonable because like fairness, right? Like if I am living in a more publicly or searchable thing, then that is
from the structure of the website, it's always pointing me to a model, and my understanding of
an actual file,
binary thingy on my laptop being in an OMX file or SPML file whatsoever. So maybe that's where the
reply
confusion.
I would assume that there are some things that you can assess from just the model,
Yeah.
but there's some things you can only assess from its context, right? Yeah.
That's why there will still be some manual assessments, even with if you provide the URL or the file resource itself. There will still be some manual assessments.
Ron, to reply to your first question, so what do I compare? I compare the model, the current state of a model with the ideal state of a model. So the ideal state of a model, let's say it will be fully reproducible, and if someone is happy to take it and to use it further, I'll be very happy. And this is something that I wanted to achieve, right? The ideal state. I may never achieve that one, but I'm just saying. And the fairness score is just an indicator. The whole fair score is just an indicator. For the second question, indeed, following the assessment, we noticed that having the models and the archives in the major repositories like biomodels and PMR help for the fairness point of view, from a fairness point of view. And another thing is just kind of like also the context. Context is very important here. So we speak about community level approach. Because, for example, I can give example from pharma companies where they have full interoperability, they have full accessibility and findability, but in their internal structure. Okay, so for example, I don't know, some pharma companies. However, that internal structure is not accessible by the public, right? So they are very private, but internally they have, let's say, 95% of fairness. However, if we take out of those environment of that community, let's say, it may score like 12% of a fairness. So that's why I'm saying the context of a fair is very, fair evaluation is also very important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, let me try using this website. All right, I'm going to say I have a Combine archive. Do I provide metadata? And now I'm going to say yes, and I'm thinking internally because it's in the SVML file. Right? Do you provide metadata? Because, like, yeah, there's plenty of data inside the SVML file. It's an SVML file. The manifest doesn't really contain metadata. As SETML. SETML is also not metadata.
This is what we considered like metadata of archive is the manifest XML. And the metadata of a model, for example, is SEDML or COPASI, but of course we take all the input from what would you consider, for example, metadata of a model, given us what?
I mean, the metadata of the model, if you want it as a separate file, it would be like metadata.rdf or something, is sort of a common way to do it. Okay. Or it would be in the SML file itself. Yeah, I mean, inside the OMX here, I can actually.
Yeah, we can take notes from now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
The metadata of the archive.
Yeah, so the manifest.xml should tell you what the files are. And that's just, I mean, you can get the same thing by unzipping it and typing ls, basically, but it's not a huge thing, and it also is required. So if you have it as an OMX file, it's there, and if you don't have it as a Combine archive, then it's not there, because it's not, unless you have like a zip file or a directory or you just have an invalid Combine archive, I guess. Yeah. All right. Okay, so if providing SETML is important, I don't think of SETML as being metadata. I think of it as being a simulation experiment. It's sort of its own thing. It is the SETML. It is a thing to do with it. It is a not all things need or should have SETML, but if there is an experiment that you are trying to convey, you should have something to convey it, either SETML or like a Python script, or at least, or a text file that describes how to load your model or something. ZML is obviously the best of that sort of format, but some
So ZML is the option.
is the thing you do with it. Yeah, it's not necessarily. I think of metadata as like it came from a rat, it came from this publication. This is bis 1,6 bisphosphate or something like that. Those sort of things.
At least the combined archive paper suggests there could be metadata.rdf.
Yeah, yeah. So metadata as a metadata.rdf file or something similar would be what I would guess. And yeah, I'll say it's on biomodels. Dun, dun, dun. So why is identified by a persistent identifier grayed out here? Can I click something else? I
I think
can't.
because there is no metadata of the archive, based on the
Oh,
platform, but
based on the previous, okay. But that doesn't even, like if it's Allen biomodels, then that has, biomodels gives it a persistent identifier.
I think it's
Actually, Francois, if I may, this is actually coming from the biomodel part. So once it's hosted in biomodels, we don't have kind of like a repository of all the archives and saying which is where. You see what I'm saying?
No, sorry.
So this
You-
was
you said-
discussed. So
Yes.
okay, yeah.
So what I'm saying is we can find archive there, but we don't, for example, we give a new relay and that is persistent identifier and it will open the archive 0.5 or it will open the archive 0.7. There is no versioning of archive, combined archive in biomodels.
Identifier, but not a persistent identifier identifying this single file you are looking
There-
at.
There is, isn't there? You can get that. They generate it on the fly, but it's there. And like, there is a persistent identifier. You can even get the particular version number. Like,
Yeah, but
in-
each specific archive that you get downloaded is not.
I guess, but
Why-
is
why
that
do
what?
you-
But aren't we talking about it in context? Like in context, it does have. If I say it's on biomodels. So I guess my feedback on that would be, I would think that anything that is on biomodels is identified by a persistent identifier. You can always get a particular, at this point, didn't used to be true, but today I can get version 1 of my file, version 2 of my file, version 3, whatever. As if it gets updated. And I can always also get like just the current version of whatever. Here, if I do. Let's grab a random model. Here, let's go. Oops. Why? There we go.
Yes, this
All
is what-
Right. So if we have a history, we have 3 versions, right? And I can go to version 1. And here's the files. No, I didn't log in, I don't think. This is just publicly available.
Yes, but this is for the model, right? It's not for the archive. So we have persistent identifier for the model,
mean-
but for the archives. This is what we are saying.
What else do you want? Like,
If Lucian clicks on the site, he can download the archive for that version.
yeah, I can download the archive for that version if I want.
Yeah, but then it would have the same identifier as the model.
Not necessarily, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know, I'm asking actually.
Like it's whatever happens to be in there, but here. There's okay, I'm back to the latest version. I have the files. Like it's been changed and stuff, but
This is what we checked. It's actually the identifier for the model, not for the archive. And we discussed this in the combined 2020 last year with because biomodels doesn't keep versioning. It's not a repository for the archive. Sorry, I have some issue.
yeah.
It's the identifier I use. in the future, that identifier could result in.
Right, but I can 660 does that, but 660.R1 or 660.R2 doesn't, right?
True, but still the OMX files are created on the fly, right? So
But I could get them from R1 or R2 if I wanted them.
They're not the same file, because it would be different metadata. But
No, it'd be the same metadata.
same metadata.
I mean, wouldn't it generate the metadata from that version?
The file name contains the date.
I guess.
Because you have
But is that makes it less fair? Like that's a problem somehow? Anyway, that confuses me, I guess, also. Yeah, like right here, I can download that version. I can download version 2. I can download version 1. I don't know. That's a good question. Where am I? Desktop. Okay. All right. Here, let me share. All right, so this is the metadata in version 1 of 660. So there is a metadata file, it's here. There's not a lot of stuff there. I think it just tells me like I downloaded it on April 26th. Yeah.
I just downloaded 2 MX files. There's 30 seconds difference and run them through a bitwise comparator.
Yeah.
The files are different.
Yeah, because that's because zip date stamps everything. Right?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking if you're comparing an OMX file like a bit container, or if I'm comparing the structure,
the semantic,
of the
yeah,
repository and the semantics behind it. And
I would assume that,
then.
yeah, I would assume that comparing the semantics is a more useful measure because every time you make a zip file, timestamps it, and you can't. As far as I could tell, like I actually tried to like untimestamp it and it didn't work, so I was like, all right, fine, just regenerate everything. So that's the metadata.rdf file. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. What is it? Modification date. Oh, it has the correct modification date. No, it doesn't. It is like just now, yeah. And it doesn't actually say that it was version 1. I just have to know. But if I know, like the method again, sort of these are things that are in context. Like there is a context. It may not tell me, but the fact that I had to go to version 1 and click download, at that point I should know it was version 1. It would be nice. I agree. It would be nice if then it saved that information.
Because I get version 3 and you get version 1, and we just look into this, we say that it's the same version, but actually I work with 7 more files and you have another 5 files in the archive itself.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the fact, like these things live in context, right? So I know that I downloaded version 1. So personally, as I got it, that information was available. I agree that it would be nice if this metadata file also indicated the version that I had, and we could like submit that as a request to biomodels. That seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to add to this list. It's a very short list. Like there are a lot of other things you could also ask to add, but that would be one particularly useful thing to add the version number. All right.
We got similar conclusion.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. All right, so that was that. All right.
Yeah, something I didn't mention earlier.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, if you want to get back to your session,
Mhm.
you have two buttons there on the very left, the vertical buttons, to copy the session ID
Oh,
or to save the session as a JSON.
okay. I wouldn't have looked at those.
Yeah, that's
Like
why I'm doing
like-
that now because I think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a single page application. So if you actualize, you actually lose your session if you did not get this first. That's also.
Oh, like if I hit reload, it would,
Yes,
okay. Yeah,
that's something we need to improve on.
that would make sense. Oh, okay, there's a difference between the archive is defined by a person is not defined by the model is identified by a persistent identifier. Huh.
Which actually this
But you do
is
say it's the same.
generally in biomodels, right? Francois model is identified by a persistent identifier, and then should be one in general, right?
Yeah, I would assume that if I said it was on biomodels, then I would pre-fill that with one. The metadata are identified by a persistent. Now that actually would be true. Like there is a, well,
It's the metadata of the archive.
The metadata of the archive changes.
yeah, and it's not really like a lot of information
Yeah,
anyway,
this is the
so.
DC modifier entry in the metadata RDF, and this DC modifier
So-
contains different date stamps.
Yeah, wow, okay,
As you get different metadata every time.
Yeah, basically,
There is no identifier specific to one
Yeah.
metadata type. It's, I don't
No,
know if it's.
like
really
if
problematic, but
we're actually working on trying to get a metadata RDF file that actually has a lot of information in there as we're like helping retroactively curate the biomodels. So then that would change at that point. I don't know, like identified by a persistent identifier is odd to me. I don't know. I don't really know what that means. Okay, however, as I imagine the future of biomodels, there will be a metadata.rdf file that is one of the files that you can download. And if you can download it from the latest version, you can also download it from previous versions. It's like it's automatically like it's clearly also generating a metadata.rdf file, and I don't know how to combine like an existing metadata file with an auto-generated one. But we can talk to them about that. And presumably you just like generate things and add it to the existing thing, I guess.
No, seriously, when I checked the metadata, I downloaded the same OMAX file from the same biomodels
Yeah,
page for the same model with like 1 minute apart.
yeah.
And I get as a timestamp for the creation of the file, I get 6 p.m. 12 minutes and 6 p.m. No, that's right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I messed up the time zones.
Yeah,
So the metadata in the OMAX file is from when the OMAX file is created and downloaded.
and it, like
Afterwards,
when
it's
you click,
dropped and
yeah,
downloaded.
yeah. All right, that's interesting.
So, yeah, but
Okay.
as this causes a lot of confusion, maybe it's a good idea to explain more in detail when you start the comparison, what you are actually evaluating now, the file or a file in a repository. somewhere.
Right, yeah.
You're completely right. You can see it like this. I download the OMAX file. I do not have a persistent identifier for the OMAX file. And even worse, the OMAX file does not exist as long as I don't download it,
Yeah,
basically.
but you can always download it,
Yes.
right? Like it's always, it will always generate you one.
Yeah.
But yes, I guess I would probably separate the things, like it's the model's context and the model itself. And like, so like, and you can ask questions. So if I say it's from biomodels, then you can like fill in all the things from biomodels because you know what they do. But then this particular model is different. Because it
That's
has a
actually
slightly
the
different.
list of dependencies.
Mhm.
It's not the dependencies between assessments, but it's a dependency on the context in this case.
Okay.
So there are some answers like the two here. If you say it's by a model, then some will pass, some will fail. automatically. Some will be set as not applicable.
Mhm.
Some will of course be a success because the way biomodel handles the model and the metadata, etc., we know that identifiers or whatever are there.
Yeah. Here's another question. It says F1. I don't know what that means. I think of that as like
It's a subgroup of the findability.
the findability.
Yeah.
Okay. I think of it as function key. F1. That was my first guess. Like I press F1 for help. Are they if they are grouped by some organizing feature, I would just say what that feature was. Like, yeah.
Those are the sub-principles.
No, I mean like
yes, they are the sub-principles. Yes, we can put the full name here. Thanks.
yeah, just actually labeled the things instead of F1 F2. All right, let's see. Yeah.
Because
I don't understand. The metadata of the archive is identified by a globally unique identifier. What? Oh, can I click on it? Okay, let's see here. The indicator serves to evaluate whether the identifier of the archive metadata is globally unique. I don't even know what the identifier is or why you would have one. Like that is confusing already. There are no, like it is the metadata, assuming that there's a metadata.rdf file that's in the files section on biomodels. Does that count as a globally unique identifier because I can go to biomodels.net and find it there, or are we talking about something else?
I'm just putting if it's, for example, Google / whatever Irinia Balaur / file1, that is not globally unique. If it's in the format, for example, of ID from the biomodels or DOI or other identifiers that in general they are globally unique. And if I give this whatever path /Google / Irinia Balaur file1 to a script again, they may find 10,000 files called file1, while if I give that UID, it just points to the model that you also just opened. It's if I click on that ID, it's unique globally, so I will always get the same model as you just opened. That's
where would I find that?
Sorry,
the thing to click.
If you go to the biomodels, for example, they have on the page, and then there is the on the home, well, yes, on the overview, or you have it also, this one, bio MDO 00066, yes, here on the right side, biomodels database. This is also something global unique, and biomodel biome MD and so on, it's also global unique.
Okay,
and
but you want a new one for just the metadata file?
Sorry, yes, it would be great, because then this basically can be separated again. As I said, if a model is removed, but the
right.
is in a structure that accepts metadata files, so it can be FairHub or FairDOM Hub or our platform, doesn't necessarily need to be here, but then the metadata there will point, okay, that is the model from biomodels, that is the model from PMR, that is the model from somewhere else, and it was removed at some point. So it's good also to
if I have a GitHub project that is my model, and there's the GitHub history, is that a globally unique? I mean, that's a globally unique way to find the history of the model. I don't know if there's there is a URL that takes me to it.
I wouldn't say that is the same, because I'm sorry, please.
No, go ahead.
I think you can actually go directly to a specific commit in the versioning system.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can tell actually. I think if it would fulfill the globally unique identifier.
Right.
To be honest, I don't think so, because let's imagine that we have a team, and this one fair models / model one, and then Francois, you create another, it's in the same team, so also model 1, but it's another, actually, there are 2 different resources. I'm not
But
sure.
GitHub won't let you do that, I don't think. Like if it's on GitHub.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
There
I
will
don't
be
know.
a new GitHub name, a unique branch name.
Yeah.
However, you want to have the same file name, you have to be in another category before.
Yeah, so like. Here.
I think it's the same sort of thing, right? If you refer to it as the full URL,
Yes.
which has the checks on database, whatever, then it is globally unique, but if it's just like a relative, you know, model of whatever, then it's not.
But okay, so it like in context, it's globally unique, but as soon as I download it to my machine, it's no longer. So if I mean, I would in general, I would assume you would want to assess things in context. I think that's the part that matters.
The goal is to find it. Yeah. So if you have the URL,
Yeah.
then I guess it is. If the URL points specifically to the resource.
To particular, yeah. So like you have a particular commit, you have.
Here is about the comments.
Yeah, here, like I browse the files and. Here, where's my. I guess this doesn't, like, imagine that this was the file. So like, here is, this is now a global unique thing. Because it has this particular commit. If I were to download it, it would lose that thing, but that doesn't, I don't need that much information in the file itself. I don't think that helps anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
What do they send?
I just put in the chat now a list of what explains with F1, F2, and so on. It's actually taken from GoFair principles, or from the website.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you can leave the F2, just F2 colon something or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Rich metadata of archive is provided to allow discovery. Let's see what that's supposed to mean. Indicator about the presence of the archive metadata and also about how much metadata is provided. So my first question is like, I don't know what supporting discovery means to you or to this website or this question.
Discovery is the findability, how helpful in a sense the metadata is to allow us to discover this archive.
Right. How do I assess helpfulness in that case?
That's why we kind of like have also this hackathon here to ask also for the community, what would you define as helpful? And again, I just wanted to point out this, what you have on the right side is the initial description. So we must update the description to the Combine archive, and this was the option 2 from tonight. So the option from tonight. What is here is what we had it in the initial template from Fair Plus template, Fair Indicator. But we need to update also this one, adapt this one to the Combine community.
Okay. So like the sorts of things would be, I don't know, like are all the in an SPML model, are all the species like identified as with a Kebi or something equivalent, and are all the reactions like to EC or RIA or something? Is that the sort of thing you, and like do you say what species it came from? Do you say the paper it came from?
We speak about the model here, right? The metadata of a model, because metadata of archive would say at least who created, who modified it, when created, when modified it. We separate it in two. So we have metadata of archive and metadata of a model. What are the files inside? So basically, if a script comes and opens this metadata file, the script will immediately understand which is the model file, will immediately understand if there is a metadata of a model file there, if there are some simulation results, simulations, information details, and so on. But as you also saw, noticed a couple of minutes ago, the manifest XML, sometimes it's very, very short, and we don't, looking only to that archive or to that metadata, we don't know who created, when created, why created, if it was published, not published, etc. Who can use it in what purpose, and so this would be
that information isn't in the manifest.xml file. It's in the but it should be in the metadata.rdf file, not in the. I don't think it should be in the manifest file.
The manifest is able to archive.
It's just a list of the files, and that's it. Yeah. Well, it's like the list of the files, like what type they are, and if it's the master file, like, and what that means is also ambiguous, but all right. Metadata of the archive. Metadata. Are we at a break?
Yeah, we just continue.
Secretly go outside to grab coffee.
No one would stop you, sir. Yeah, I'm happy to take a break.
Maybe we could finish at F2 and then.
Sure, or finish the Fs. Let's finish the Fs.
Okay.
Like F2 was F2 we're already done, right?
Why just finish F2?
Yeah.
That's a success story right there. You cannot stop. You cannot stop answering questions.
The second F2 question, so F2.2, isn't that like a sub question of the first one? So if there's no metadata information at all for the model, that does necessarily mean that the archive is not rich of metadata. If there's just information of who did it and when it was done, and no information about the model at all, that doesn't help me with the metadata of the archive, right? So is it dependent on each other?
I don't think they're dependent. I think they're separate. I think it's just the metadata about the archive and then the metadata about the model. The metadata about the model is about like species references and whatever. And the metadata about the archive is like who made it, what, like maybe like what paper it came from. Yeah.
There is no metadata inheritance, like the metadata which is in the model and describes the model is not counted as metadata for the archive.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I was, that's my assumption. That's how I would interpret it, but
yeah, there are actually four major components. So initially we had data and metadata in traditional, let's say, data sets. So we have data and then described by metadata. When we translated for the combined archive, we translated the data, split it in combined archive itself and the combined model, or the model itself, right? And then for the metadata, we did the same. So instead of having a single file or a single entity of metadata, we wanted to have metadata of archive, metadata of a model. This helps us a little bit more, perhaps it's more detailed, but it helps us to actually to see the impact, which is more critical to have in order to have a better, let's say, which is the better contribution to the final fairness score. If at some point we don't feel that some indicators are unrelevant for the combined archive, we also can decide to withdraw them. So indeed, there are four major entities: archive, model, metadata of archive, metadata of model.
okay. Yeah, I was thinking like includes.
In F3, for example, metadata of a model, if we consider the biomodel, and if we consider the web page that is available on the biomodels, we have an identifier of a model there. So actually we can put here 0.5. This is what we marked. But if it was somewhere else and the identifier of a model, and for example, if we don't consider metadata of a model, even the web page itself, we should have put it 0. However, what we wanted to do is also to encourage people to use the platform, the model repository, because they have a benefit. It may not be necessarily very immediately coming in a separate metadata model, but that's an ideal file, that's an ideal situation. But some information can be deduced from the API from biomodels or from API from PMR, or it is available at least for human intervention, even if it's not necessarily for direct machine intervention. So here in manual assessment for F3 for metadata model, we put 0.5.
Oh, like you would automatically do that for biomodels or whatever, or actually no, no,
If you go to the
this one is not in.
No answer.
Sorry, I was trying to unclick. Can I unclick? I can't unclick. Once I click, I can't like go back. If I guess that would be another thing, like just in general, after I click somewhere, I can't say like, oh wait, unclick that. So you could either just pre-fill everything with no answer, or yeah. If no answer is supposed to indicate, like there's a difference between like I never clicked anything versus I know that I don't know the answer to this. There's a slight difference at least, right? And if you want to capture that, then you need to let people unclick versus, and then if you don't care about the difference, then just pre-fill the no answer and then let people do that. I don't. Yeah, or just.
All considering.
If I click that again, it would disappear. Would be my imagination.
You're running the risk that lists a question or just clicks continue.
Yeah.
If it's not filled at all, the evaluation of the form will come back to you and say, hey, please fill that out.
Please fill out. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Model. The metadata of the model. My first thought about that is just the metadata actually in the SBML file itself, which is where biomodels tends to store that information. Like, and it does store that information. It stores that this is biomodel 660 inside biomodel 660.xml. But if you pull that out into a metadata RDF file, you might have a single metadata RDF file with both of these things. I guess does it not matter to you if it's in one or the other, or just if it exists somewhere?
That's true. Thank you. Real simple. Sorry, come again.
Okay. So the two questions in F3
Yes.
might be answerable by two different sources, like the metadata, like the identifier of the model might actually live in the SBML file and say what its metadata would say, what its ID is, versus I might also have a metadata.rdf file that has pulled that information out and puts it there, either both or separately. But the information about the archive would have to be in the metadata.rdf file. Presumably I wouldn't store that in the SML file itself. That seems
So
awkward.
even if you have the identifier of the archive in the metadata of the model, would it count?
Oh, is that okay? Yeah, or I guess there just may be separate, there may be different places where that information could live.
Yeah,
and they may overlap. Yeah.
In this case, maybe you could pick 0.5, because partially we have the identifier of the archive, but it's not in the right place,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
The other way is
I guess what, maybe I would rename this, reword this to just say the identifier for the model is in the archive, or is in some metadata, and like it doesn't matter where. Like if it doesn't matter to where, if you do care, then maybe it would matter. All right. The data is offered in such a way that it can be harvested and indexed.
That would be
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So I can certainly harvest metadata of the HTML model, but in case of annotated, I can also index what's annotated in there, but it's of no use because I would have to resolve the ontology annotation first to get some useful full text information for the index, right? So how is it meant? I can harvest and index the ontology terms in there, but it's not useful to have only the ontology terms in there, right?
I think it's, I mean, I can't imagine trying to also put all the information from the ontology terms in the file, like that would seem.
No, not in the file, but
Yeah.
like resolving the ontology entries and put them in the index.
In what index?
I created a database which does exactly.
Oh,
that.
okay.
You can-
So so if it can be harvested and indexed,
That's not
then
actually
yeah, that would, I would say that like, I mean, I wouldn't try to put more information in the file other than just the ontology URL, right? Yeah, yeah. So I would assume that like, if there are ontology terms and you're good on that, and you get a 1.
But what is meant is index? If I can harvest something,
Yeah.
I could throw it on the index. So is there?
Oh, yeah. Is there a difference between harvesting and indexing?
Indexing. Everything which I have in my hands and I harvest it from somewhere, I can throw on the index. Question here for me would be if it is useful to put in the index.
So are you basically asking like, can you imagine any situation that could be harvested but not indexed, or the other way around? Like,
Yeah.
so
Kind of. So where's the semantically the
Distinct,
semantic
yeah.
distinguishment between harvested and indexed? I know what you mean, but
I mean, maybe you could just sort of imagine those in parentheses, like it can be harvested and indexed.
how do I define the and? Is it like an or?
Yeah. Or
Human language or is it like
Yeah.
a computer and?
yeah, here. I can click on it and see if it the. Yeah, here the sentence just says it can be indexed. So it doesn't say anything about harvesting. So if you read the whole thing, it would.
Both one and the same.
So they're just synonyms.
So basically the question is if I can get hold of the metadata somehow automatically.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a typo here. There's no space.
I think that this one was like sort of this distinction between providing documentation, which describes things that might be here.
Yeah.
The metadata could be available because someone has written the description.
Mhm.
But then available, it's not very cheap.
Oh, so the difference between like the notes and the annotation and the SBML file, sort of in its general analogy form.
Yeah. But kind of,
Yeah. There's been a conversation here that I'm missing.
it's available.
Actually, just the record of the Zoom meeting also records the chat.
It also records the chat. Yeah.
Okay, then.
So in the recording, it'll be there. All right, are we taking a break? Should I hit pause on the recording? All right. Thank you all. This has been interesting. We'll see you in a few minutes. Actually, should we come 20 minutes today? Is that good? 11:05?
Yeah.
Okay. 20 minutes. 5 after the hour. See you then.
Okay, cool. See you.
Thank you. All right, we're back. Breakified. Is it helpful to continue to go through that form? Like, was that a useful thing to go through the Fs? Should we go through the As and stuff? I'm happy to do it if it's,
If you
yeah.
have any comments,
Sure, yeah.
the act itself. If they have to do it, but they're going through this.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
I have to say,
all right.
sometimes it's hard to hear what others say than you, Lucian. So especially the back row, I think David spoke sometimes in the first part, and I never understood him. And just now, Francois, I also did not hear what he said.
Okay. And I have the
Hopefully-
loudest voice. I'm in the front, so that doesn't help.
Yeah.
I can try to repeat things from back of the room if need be.
Would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, archive identifier resolves to a digital object. I don't know how that wouldn't be true, but it's true for this. Like, is there?
In general, we don't have an identifier for archive, right? I'm just saying, asking.
Oh, like. Oh, because if it is generated on the fly, then that's a 0.
For the next one, indeed, we model identifier result to a digital object, that's true. But for the archive itself, I don't know.
For biomodels in particular, I mean, some of these are just sort of biomodels specific questions, but. I don't think it would change the fairness of biomodels if the archive was pre-generated versus generated on the fly. I don't think it would change the accessibility. Yeah, go ahead.
The point is that if you generate some sort of data, like an archive, it should be possible to refer to it. So if an archive doesn't have any ID, there's no way to link to it. And I think that's, if I'm not misunderstood, that's the point here. Right? Or maybe I misunderstood actually. Are we at the
I don't know.
Isn't it URL to the archive an ID in a way?
But the issue here is that
Okay, yeah.
not get the exact same archive every time. So would it be considered the same digital?
Like
I mean,
a
semantically,
URL
it's the same.
to a certain version of the archive.
Yeah. I mean, you get the timestamp difference, but all the other semantic results are the same, right?
But that's also pretty unintuitive, right, for users. So, I mean, for papers, it's really easy. If you share a DOI, you know the other person finds exactly the paper. And I mean, I would really find it useful to have similar identifier schemes for the archives, for the models, and also for each version of a model, each version of an archive. I think it will make life a lot easier when reusing and also publishing models or archives.
If you, for example, consider Zenodo, right? In Zenodo, you also have a DOI.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
But you also get the latest version
Mhm,
of the.
yeah. You could use the same thing, but right now we don't have it. I mean, there is no, as far as I know, there is no proper way to tell Ron to reuse a specific combined archive other than downloading it and sending him the archive, like physically. But I don't have any identifier that I can share with Ron and then make sure that he looks at the same archives that I look at.
I mean, ultimately, if you really wanted to say like this is like literally the same, then you would do this, and you would right click on this and say copy link address. And then right, you would say this is that.
Yeah, that's
which is-
cool, but that is the model, not the archive. If
No,
biomodel
it's the
is
archive.
now
If I click on this for download, I get the archive. Right.
but if you now add, but if you add
At some
any
point
other-
I will get the archive. There it is. Yeah. Oh, and then the file actually is like has
this is
426. So that's like
what is it, your
day
download time? or-
as opposed to the time the day it was. Yeah.
But if biomodels now add another figure, or they change the description on the website, a model description would go to the model file. I need an example. or they describe they change the ZML description. You could still download version 3. You would get the same. I mean, you would get a different identifier because you always get a different file name. But if you use the model identifier, you will not see that there's a change in the ZML description, for example, and you will get a different content in your archive. Without
Right,
the
but that's
model
not a
having
problem
changed.
of the web. That's not a problem from biomodels. If you care, then you put the .1 or .2 or .3 or whatever. And if you don't, if you just say the latest, then there's a different URL for that.
Oh, well, I'm saying there's a difference between giving an identifier to the model, which we have, and giving an identifier to the archive. So you could have,
Yeah, that's this right here.
you have to track it differently, basically,
Copy
is
link
my
address.
argument.
So like here's that, this is the link to the model. And there's the .3 and there's the particular file name. And that will always, that URL will always get you that particular file.
Yeah,
And that
that's
actually
true.
doesn't change, right?
Mhm.
That this one doesn't change. It doesn't auto, the second thing that I put in chat does not change with time.
You're right.
It doesn't change like if I download it in a minute versus 2 minutes ago.
The
It's just
question
actual.
really is, and we had a lot of discussion about exactly this, like this scenario. You really have to be clear what you're evaluating here, because right now you're not evaluating the SBML standard or the combined archive standard, but you're evaluating biomodels in a sense.
Right.
Because I mean, there's nothing in the combined archive standard telling you how to, I think, no standardized way to generate identifiers. But I think it should be part actually of the archive requirements. And then
you
we
would
could
want-
say combine archives are fair because they always, each archive must have an identifier that resolves to the archive itself. So some URI that you can resolve and end up at the very specific digital object, which is a combined archive.
Okay.
So then you get all the archives fair because it's in the specification for archives. Right now you're just looking at the biomodels implementation.
Well, I mean, to see if something is fair, like context is important. So we are talking about the model on biomodels. We are not talking about the model file on my computer, right? That's not, model file on my computer is not findable, and the model file on biomodels is much more findable.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the thing.
But what I mean is, if we want to support people in creating fair resources, we should consider requiring identifiers for each archive as part of the specification, as we required for a model file as well.
See if I've done this. Okay, good. So what biosimulators is doing is creating URLs or identifiers that look like this. Put this in the chat. And that is supposed to be sort of a general. So you can't go to Omex, you can't like click on that link and get the file. It is just an identifier.
Okay.
But it will always.
So what is the Omex library? That's cool. Never saw it.
Right. It is something I think the biosimulators like created.
That's I mean, that's a dummy namespace to ensure that everyone who codes the omics metadata will get the same graph.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
So exactly what we want actually.
Okay.
Identifiers. So question is, why don't we use identifiers.org? Because that's what we still use for SBML. And am I right?
We presumably we could, I don't know, if, like we sort of using
Oh,
identifiers.org instead of library.org or
this one.
yeah.
This is just a convention defined in the spec. This make sure you have between.
Oh,
I
in
didn't
which
get
spec?
that.
So it's a convention in the OMX metadata spec. Oh, so it actually, the OMX metadata spec actually mentions omxlibrary.org. Okay.
Okay,
So,
I didn't do
this,
my homework.
apparently, yeah.
Oh, you should. Unbelievable. Okay, good.
If you have a major repository that indexes all of it.
I don't know if you heard that. Is it Henning talks about a meta repository that indexes all the other repositories?
That's what would do this if we wanted the system resolvable.
Yeah. So this isn't resolvable, but it is at least is it persistent? What does persistent mean? It's not persistent.
No.
Okay. So it's not persistent, it's not resolvable, but at least it's consistent. I guess. All right. Model is accessible through standardized protocol. The grammar on that, I would say through a standardized protocol or through standardized protocols. Anyway, tiny issue. That's like I can download it from biomodels, basically. Oh, and you pre-generated a one for that, so that's probably what you mean. For that too. Archive can be accessed manually with human intervention. I would pre-fill that to be one for biomodels also. Metadata of archive identifier resolves to a metadata or metadata of archive record. Wow, I have no idea what that's going to mean. Indicator is about the resolution of the archive identifier. No space there. It should be associated with the resolution service. So is that about like something that's the persistent and the resolvable part of things? Like the omxlibrary.org should actually send you to the thing? Okay. So that's what we don't have. So that would be, I guess, a 0. Oh, it might help as I'm scrolling down to keep the column titles up. The data of the model can be accessed manually.
Yes, usually this is the case because we can do different things manually. This is kind of like a minimum of fairness, and we have it either in SBML file, we have it in the web page, we have it. So in principle, it's quite yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Metadata of a model is accessed through standardized protocol, meaning HTTP, FTP, API, and so on. So it's standardized protocol, and since
Okay.
it's in our models, it can be accessed through standard. That's why you have it already pre-filled.
But that one was not pre-filled.
Sorry?
The metadata of the model
Sorry,
not
sorry.
pre-filled. Metadata of the archive was.
That's probably me who forgot it in the setting. Yeah.
Although not all biomodels, I guess, would have metadata. Most of them do. But no, like if it could be on biomodels and just be a brand new thing, but the model itself has no metadata yet, right?
But I think about it, yeah, maybe the model is there, but not all models
Have metadata at all, right? So it makes sense to not pre-fill it. But But I would assume this is one of those times where it's okay to put the information in the SBML file itself. There is a way to access it. It's there. You can. There's a standardized protocol for reading it and everything. The model contains information to enable the user to get access to the model. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, someone needs to be authorized. So for example, we share it in the Combine community, but we do not share it in another community or something. Someone needs to know who to contact in order to get access to the model, or even in the Combine community. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's
So I guess if it was the OMEX library, then that would be a no. Or something.
it comes very much from the initial indicator data sets where it was for data set and the metadata of a data set. If I want access to a specific data set from a project, I need to know who to contact, who is the data manager, who is the data provider, who is the data, someone who can give me access. And I go to the metadata I see there. Here, if it's not very relevant to, so what is priority? We also can change the priority if it's not relevant, for example, or I can't enable to get information. It's important, okay. It's not essential.
How about it?
Mhm.
Let's say the model is available, you don't need to authenticate or to ask for access. Would having the link to the model be enough for this one to be one?
The one that I just filled out as zero.
Yes.
Metadata of the model. I would assume so. Some sort of, I mean, this is sort of a breadcrumb sort of thing, right? Like if I have the model. Oh, I guess it's the metadata.
Let's
So
say you have only the metadata.
yeah, if I only have the metadata, I should be able to actually get the metadata.
And in the metadata, you have the link to the model.
Yeah.
Is that enough for this one to be? You don't need any additional information to get the model.
I would assume so. Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit more about authorization and authentications. For example, I have a metadata, it describes this model, but the model from some reason is confidential, or from some reason a little bit of restricted in licensing. I need to know who to contact.
Right. Yeah. Right. Can we access the archive? Can we access automatically? Yes. That's another sort of biomodels that could be pre-filled to one, I would think. The archives can always, you can just get it from biomodels. There's always download buttons.
The archive is on the biomodels. If it's not, you can't.
So if it's on biomodels, you can pre-fill that answer to one, because you can always get the archive.
I think in the questionnaire for the pre-questionnaire for the user, we didn't complete that we have an archive or something. I'm not sure exactly. So in principle, those questions at the beginning also refine or help to fill these indicators. So if a user initially said, okay, I'm not sure if I have an archive or not a model or something, this will not be filled. If it was, I think if we put already that we provide an archive, that would have been filled automatically as one. I think, I don't know, we need to say perhaps a session. Please, if you want to say.
Here, let me, I'll click on the link separately. Oh, no, wait, it was on the.
I think with the case, right, where there was no archive for the biomodel.
Did I claim that there was no archive in the
I think so.
No, I don't remember. Okay. Front end. Well, I'm not sharing this, but anyway. I said it would provide metadata, models SBML. Oh, like I didn't check these two boxes. Is that what it was? Model of the archive as manifest.xml or metadata as setml? Like neither of those are true because it's a metadata to RDF file. Was that here? We'll try that. No, I don't remember what I was on. Archive can be accessed. Okay, yes. So if I didn't fill it out, I'm not sharing this here. share the other one, I think. Is that the right one? Nope, it's the one I was already sharing. Okay, so for this, how did that happen? Oh my gosh. This one, I guess. Okay, so when oh, if I hit reload, it doesn't even take me to that page. Oh no, there it is. Okay, sorry. Okay, Combine Archive, yes, metadata, it's SBML. If I don't check either of those, because neither of those are literally true, then it tells me that the archive is not filled out automatically. So if I reload and say it's an archive, I provide metadata, it's SBML, and there's a manifest, I guess. Now let's see what it does. No, it still doesn't say that it can be accessed automatically. So yeah, yeah, here.
Yes, it's related actually to the ID of archive, and because we don't have a persistent globally unique identifier of our archive, we can't access it via machine script, right? If you go back to the indicator.
Yeah.
Slightly different. It's not by human intervention.
Okay, with all of this, this setting means that it can be accessed by a computer. The computer should be able to go there and get the archive, like through those download URLs. And in fact, like I regularly do that. I go to those download URLs and get things for our computers, for our scripts.
Yes, yes, it's not specifically mentioned specifically that it's human intervention. But let's so it was archive can be
So this is can be accessed automatically.
yes.
So that should just be pre-filled to 1. Because the machine can get it anytime they want.
Yes,
in
but
fact,
how
there's
do we know which is which can be accessed, but it will access something, but we don't know that it will be the archive we want because we cannot give a URL ID, right?
yeah, you can if you want, you can get the latest with the standard one, or you can get a particular version with a whatever .1 or .3 or something, and that'll get you a particular one.
It's not always. It's why we can't complete it always with 1, right? That's why we leave a user to complete it. We can't complete the tool cannot pre-fill this information, right?
I think it can. I don't know why it didn't.
We had a case when we tested, when we manually assessed a non-curated model where the archive had no name. It had another name, so, and it was not an Omex archive, it was a simple zip. So in that case, I actually don't know if it could be computed automatically, the link towards it. I mean,
Well, I guess
I mean, it's not curated yet.
it's not curated, but it would still have a. It's yeah.
It doesn't have a BioMD, right? It has a model.
No, it's a
Model, yeah, model 1, whatever.
But I mean, the ones that are published or that are curated will have a BioMD, and then you can.
So that would be a single thing for that the user could say, like, this is a curated model, and then you could have a lot more answers automatically for for a little bit of user information.
Because
but even here. No, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that we also tested with non-curated versus curated, and then the COVID collection. So we had 5 groups, right, sets of models, and of course we knew already, we anticipated that there will be a little bit more fairness for the curated models, and then we also want to prove is that indeed it comes from curation helps. This is what we are saying. And yes, I recall we can provide actually this list of the examples that we used. They are the same from the combine from last year, and the one the non-curated is
Robinson 2020.
Yes.
I'll give the link. I have it open somewhere.
All right, so here's a non-curated model.
Chat. You know, it was Robinson.
It's a zombie model. And it also, yeah, these things also have histories and download links. I mean, if you consider these download links to be semantically equivalent, even though they are not binary equivalent. What's that?
The download links for that.
Like, what is it? Here, let me see. Copy link address. Yeah.
So this
So
should
as
be
far as
always one for.
I think they should be always one for things that are on biomodels, even if they're not curated. If at least as long as you were considering semantically the same, even if the timestamps are different. Can be assessed manually. It might also be nice, like if I click this one, then I would auto fill in this one. Like presumably, if a computer can do it, then a human could also do it.
A little bit lower on the previous one, but yes. Archive can be accessed automatically. Why in this case is one for the non-curated one?
Oh,
Or
sorry, here.
So the previous one.
The archive can be accessed automatically. I guess whatever the question is, where it says the archive can be accessed by a human.
Yeah,
Was it earlier or something? Oh yeah, here it is. I guess I would. The simplest thing would be to list them in order, like can be accessed by a computer. If I click that, then it should fill in that one, and then I don't need to worry about.
They're actually supposed to be ordered. No, I'm supposed in the sense in the list I have they have a specific order.
Oh.
But for some reason, they are disordered here.
They're in a completely different order. So well, okay. And then the same thing with the model. If the model can be accessed by a computer, then the model should also be accessible by a computer.
Yeah.
Oh, and in fact, you pre-filled this. If you pre-filled this, you can pre-fill this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you pre-filled this with a, I don't remember what that column was. It was a NA? Really? I don't think that should be an NA. I think that should be be dependent on biomodels, and I would probably put it as 0 because they don't put the right information in the metadata right now. Until they update things and change that.
We did not find field in the manifest XML file to provide information to enable the user to get access to the archive. So that's why basically we thought that the structure of a meta manifest XML does not support this XML tag, or you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's not where the metadata lives though. It lives in a metadata.rdf file, not the manifest.xml. And it does provide you a metadata.rdf file, and it should indeed put the information in that, and it doesn't right now. So hopefully after we clean it up, it will, but I just wouldn't put it as an NA.
Maybe we can take that issue and change it.
Free access portal. I would have assumed that this would be a 1 for biomodels. Unless you were thinking that like generated on the fly didn't count, but I would think they would. Metadata of the model. This would have to be indicated by hand because it doesn't necessarily even exist at all. So in my case, it is a 1. Metadata of archive. Like somehow you've pre-done this with 1. And then the model is accessible to that. Yeah, assuming that there is the model at all. Is there always a model in something on biomodels, even in the non-curated branch? I can't imagine there not be, but technically.
Yes. Is there cases where you have a page for a model by a model?
And you only have the setML file, you don't have the model itself or something, right? You've just uploaded a couple things and you haven't actually uploaded the model yet.
Yes, look that up.
I suppose, I mean, I don't think there's any restrictions on what you upload to biomodels. I don't think, right? Like if you upload something, it just, they don't let you make it publicly accessible until it's published though. So maybe there's a requirement that there actually be a model at that point. All right. Maybe this actually is automatically a 1 then. Supports authentication, says authorization. Biomodels does that, I guess. All right. Why? How does that change fairness? Like if it's publicly available, why do I need authentication also?
Because let's say that the model is not publicly available, you need to be get access to it.
So does publicly available then like me, if it's publicly available, then it would satisfy that criteria?
Yeah, but it's also the opposite. If someone wants to restrict the access, to have a control access, I want to share it only for a couple of people and to keep it a little bit confidential from, I'm not sure what reason publication is, I have no idea. Do I, as basically the platform, and indeed it supports the authentications authorization, especially until I think it's published or it's in development stage. I don't know why.
Is that, how does that make something more fair?
Because let's say the model is restricted.
No, sorry. How does, say I have it on GitHub, it's just freely available on GitHub.
Yeah.
Or okay, let's not say GitHub because GitHub actually does authentication. I put it up on my website.
Yeah.
It's freely available. I don't have any authentication. Am I adding to the fairness by adding authentication to that, or is it, or if it's already freely available, wouldn't that be fine?
The question is slightly different. So, for example, if a model works with sensitive data, I'm not sure. We speak about combined models, which may not. I'm
right.
speaking a little bit more sensitive. So it's computation model with sensitive data and medicine and something. Am I, as a user, can I have this functionality? Yes, indeed, it helps for the fairness.
Right. In those cases when it's not freely available. But if it is freely available, I would make this NA or and not count it towards any score.
But
if everything is just free. What?
This
Go
is
ahead.
precisely for the platform itself. So, for example, I choose to work with biomodels, and it provides me with functionality and also PMR. But someone else, not giving an example, Francois, Tom, as you are here, Tom wants to go for something else, which does not actually provide this functionality. In a sense, it's slightly encouraging also users to go for something which covers more on the fairness part. And the indicator actually
wait, sorry. It encourages users to go for something that covers more on the fairness part. What?
Yes, covers this part because, well, it's part of the fairness, and they are defined in the fair group, from the fair people, from the fair. You see what I'm saying? We just here we adapt.
Sorry.
Okay, so basically we are in the set of indicators that achieve principle A12, accessibility 1-2, which we can check what exactly it is. So someone needs to be able, if they wish, to have this authentication authorization, to have a control of their whatever model property and so on. So this is a little bit, as it was a little bit discussed also, it's not necessarily at the model itself entity or archive entity, but it's a little bit of a platform. So choosing between some platforms that support this functionality and some platforms, or keeping the model somewhere on the Google somewhere without any mechanism.
Yeah, I just don't see any value added if I don't care about any of that. If I want to make something freely available, I have all the models available, data is available, anything else is available. I put it on a free website. That's not going to be less fair than putting on a website that has authentication that I don't use.
One thing is actually open accessibility is not free, or accessibility
Oh, where
doesn't.
necessary. So if the FAIR principle says where necessary, then in that case, if it's freely available, I would make those questions either just automatically 1 or automatically NA.
I guess so.
Yeah, or, yeah.
Okay.
I would say so in this case.
I would give credit to the platform that support that feature. This is what I'm saying. I would encourage people to use the platform that actually has a chance to support authentication authorization, because they may not need it now, but in future as a best practice, and to encourage people to use some platform that actually cover this and protects the whatever IP, intellectual property, and so on, whatever it means. I would give full credit to this, encourage.
Sure, you can give credit to that, but that doesn't change its fairness. Like, it's nice. It's like having a well-designed API or like a pretty colors on the front page. I would encourage people to do that too, but it doesn't change the fairness.
It's useful. It's not indeed, it's not essential for fairness. It's useful. So that's why I'm saying encouraging.
I just don't think it affects fairness at all. Like, anyway, I mean, we can, I've said my piece. I don't need to argue more, but I just don't think I don't think a freely available thing is less fair than something that I can restrict stuff on if I'm not going to. So that's all I care about. Metadata archive is guaranteed to remain available after the archive is no longer available. Metadata. Okay, yeah, this is definitely a platform thing.
Archive is the metadata guaranteed to still be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would pre-populate for this for biomodels, but I don't know what to give it. I would probably a 0. I feel like a biomodels gets a 0 for this and PMR gets a 1 because PMR does actual Git repositories. So when you delete it, it has the history, but biomodels doesn't do the Git repositories. So if it's gone, it's just gone. And in fact, they have deleted things, I think, that you now can't get. So I think that's just a 0 for biomodels. I don't, anyway. And then the metadata for the model also, yeah. All right. 2/4 of the way there. Archive content expressed in standardized formats. That's something you can, so this is now something, if I upload a thing, you can analyze it and pre-fill this for me. Like that's a thing you should be able to tell. Like if I give you, if I give you an OMEX file, you should be able to say like, all right, that's true or not. I would also, one thing I have found in our efforts to clean up the biomodels, we have discovered that there are files there that are invalid, like an invalid PDF or something. There some in the particular cause of that was there was a computer program that would generate a summary of the file in PDF form, and if it failed, it would give you a PDF file that was actually a text file that said the process failed. So, right. So that was an invalid PDF file. And there was a bunch of like random invalid files here and there. I might add a new question here, like there are standardized formats and the files are actually valid would be a nice thing. Oh, is it down there somewhere? Okay.
Not 100% sure, but I think.
Yeah.
On what level is that question raised? I mean, I can also put a text file in there, which is not named text file, but note, something like this. That would not be a standardized file. Will I be punished for that? Or is there a list of at least
so
the standardized form?
That's something the manifest would tell you. The manifest.xml file should list everything and tell you its format.
Yeah.
So if I have something .node and it is a text file, the manifest can tell me this is a format text. So I would say the validation should be whatever the manifest file's format said it was the particular format. Is it actually that format?
But what does count as standardized format in that case?
Anything that you can put on that list, right? I mean, there are. I don't remember who does those. Like list all those formats have standard lists. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, a picture would not be standardized, right? If the pictures in the Omex file.
A picture? No, JPEG. You can have invalid JPEG files, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if I can manage to add something in the archive, something useful in the archive, which is not standardized, and will then get a penalty for that.
Oh, if there's. Well, I mean, that's the first one. Archive content is expressed in standardized formats, right?
File, the description of the archive is not as useful as the structured data description.
But you shouldn't be penalized for also including a text file. It's just like a readme.txt or readme.md or something, right? I mean, it's a readme. Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's because the machine can't do anything with that.
Oh, wait, are you saying that a text file is not a standardized format?
In
I-
FairTest,
Isn't it? I would have.
in FairTest, they analyze two things for this. They check whether the data is structured. So, for example, if it's a YAML, a JSON, or RDF file, it's fine. It's considered standard. And certainly, they test the semantic inside. If there are ontologies or something like that.
Yeah.
And if so, saying it's standard. If both of them, then data is standard. But they themselves they test separately. So in our case, I don't know.
I mean, I still can't get over the idea that text isn't something.txt isn't a standard file. Like surely that's a standardized file.
If I include in my Omex file a text file saying thanks to all contributors, here are the names. I really appreciate your work.
Yeah.
And add that to the Omex file because I'm free to do that, right?
Yeah.
Will there be a penalty for that because I added a text file saying thank you and it's not a standard format, nothing structured, something like that?
Yeah.
So what is the definition of?
I would have hoped that a text file is a standardized format because like an ASCII file or an UTF-8 file or whatever is a standard. I mean, if a binary file is an invalid text file, isn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not, not penalized for doing that. But it'd be more rewarded if you could put that in a structured way so that a machine can understand it.
Like a decent core, I think, following people and then recast for the people.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, like, but you could, but I can imagine having both. I mean, like, it's useful to have that, but it's also like, I don't know, text file says, here's your birthday present, happy birthday, so and so. Like, I'm not going to standardize that. Yeah. The text file, I don't know, like it's no different from a PDF file, right? Like a PDF is a standard file, but so if I make a note, if I put thanks to my contributors and put it as a PDF file, that's suddenly better than putting it as a text file, because PDF is a structured. Yeah, okay, that's crap. Like, no. But like you would, but I don't, right? Like I,
You're saying that the text file.
Because it's a specification that tells me how I can interpret that file. In a plain text file, there's nothing that tells you anything about what the content of it is.
it tells you that it's text, it tells you that it's human readable.
Exactly.
Only a good PDF with some structured information.
But there's a specification that says this is how you can read it, what you can learn from it, and you define what you can learn from it.
It is,
No, you
it
can't.
is structured lines. It has, text file has a structure, they have one or more lines. Read by count line fixed and then.
Right, I mean, like,
There is structure.
it's just as structured as a PDF with no metadata, right?
You've got a PDF, you've got a structure.
In which case it's a standard. Right, it's standardized, and so if you're saying here's a file, and it's typed as huge format X, right? It's a standard, right? Then I can look up huge format X and I can see.
Well, you can do that, there's a thing for text also, I mean, there's. A Perl, that's it, Perl.org, I can, like, there's a Perl.org URL for text files. So that does count, so that's okay, that's great. Right?
I was more thinking of, is there a list of minimal information required or minimal content required in the archive, and is this content provided in a standardized format? Because I could include any kind of garbage. I want.
And I think that's the discussion thing.
Yeah. So is there like a threshold of everything useful, necessary is there and is presented in standard format? And everything else can be a thank you file whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this that I'm never gonna look at, right?
Right. The octave file or
An octave file, I mean, it's there, but and it provides a little bit of value that I personally don't care about. Yeah. No, but
you ask, thank you.
yeah, you get points taken off if you don't do it.
Yeah, right, I think this is the thing, it's not about saying this is a bad score. To say this is a score, and in future you try to improve that score.
By taking out my text file, it says happy birthday. Like, that's not a better archive, I don't know, it's not.
Getting back to the point, saying it's more fair is everything structured, it's the whole point, that I can get that.
But if I can make it a PDF and that's somehow better than a text file where the content is identical, that's not.
Can't be much better, only slightly better, you've got no structure to the information.
From this list, a PDF would be fine. PDF has the defined format, you can validate it. And it passes all the numbers, so if by converting my text file to a PDF, I have improved my FAIR score. That's crap, like, I'm sorry, no, like that's not better. Yeah.
I can think you could slightly improve your FAIR score, you can't get the maximum.
Right.
Because you haven't.
Is it structured metadata that's machine?
One of the great conversations.
Archived for eternity, all right, like, that's enough of that, fine, whatever. It's like, all right, I know I'm all annoyed for no reason, it's fine. Metadata model uses machine understandable knowledge representation. So basically, like, ontology references or something. Yeah. Yeah. Standardized formats. As opposed to just sort of free text or something, is that what? Do some people try to provide the metadata as like,
Yes.
this is, yeah, okay. Okay. So yeah, basically, are these official annotations as opposed to just notes or something? Okay, all right. Model content. This is the bit about like the model content, it is SPML or something, right? Or it is LML. I'll use machine understandable knowledge representation, sure.
Does that get anything on top of SPML or
I mean, meta,
different from
like, oh, like which one?
the standardized format?
Mats versus,
I guess you can have a standardized format that's not.
oh yeah, like you could, your model could be a MATLAB script,
Okay,
right? That's a standard format, but it's not machine readable, right? Or it's not machine readable in this way.
got it, okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think the examples. Oh, it's something. Oh, my bad.
Okay. Data of archive uses machine understandable. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
Yeah.
sure.
It's a lot.
I am my instincts are rebelling against all these questions about metadata of the archive and the metadata of the model.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't know what to do better, but I'm like, it makes me growl. I don't know if that's good feedback or not, but
No, that's perfect. Your decreasing interest and your increasing speed when answering the questions is very symptomatic.
right.
I don't care anymore.
Yeah, whatever. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, go ahead.
This is a very, very valued feedback. We had the same thingy in the last combined meeting.
Uh-huh.
And it was also very hard to answer the questions because understanding the question, even if you work like for years in the field like you,
Yeah.
it's quite hard. And you really need to be a domain expert to understand.
Understand even the questions are being asked. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, so very valuable, but many questions and really hard to answer. Most leads to humans giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we want to put the data. Also.
Yeah, I can see the point.
And I mean, that's one thing you could do. Like you could try to automate the answers more and also just sort of hide them like automatically, like anything that was automatically hidden, just not even show them the questions. Like you could click a button to expand to show all the pre-filled things if you want to change them, but by default, just.
It would also be an awesome idea for the dependent question. If I answer
Yes.
here, only then show me the dependent question.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
one we actually thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not actually implemented yet.
Right, but yeah, be slightly better.
Just saying, if you throw like 40 something questions on a human,
Yeah.
always when I get a survey, it says like you can answer the surveys in 3 minutes, and it's always a lie. So basically, from getting all the surveys, please help us, and so on and so on. Every
Yeah.
airline sends that. I'm very reluctant from the beginning to start answering those. So
Yeah.
maybe there is a mechanism to ease me in or make it more fun, playable, whatsoever. Give me a score for answering it. Did I get it good in a good time?
Your personal fair score goes up over time. The more, yeah.
Expert score.
At the very end, you answer all the questions in 2 hours. Congratulations. Most people take 5.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. This, but yeah, it's an idea to try to make it more interactive. But yeah.
Yeah. And some of the metadata of archive versus metadata of the model could probably be collapsed at this point. And the other thing is that it doesn't even capture, like if I have a setML file in there, the setML itself can have metadata about it, and I haven't been asked any questions about it. Like it is neither the archive nor is it the model. Go ahead, Dagmar.
Yeah, so we decided to focus on like the central files for now, which is the model
Yeah.
and and the archive, well, we believe, but you could do a similar thing for the ZML, also for the experimental data set, for the graphics, whatever. Yeah, the idea was just to go for what people usually spend most time on. It's a model, and then for the archive, it's probably more to check if the archive format works or whether we can improve it.
Yeah.
I also thought we could, so the questions like for the metadata, they are kind of, it's different stages of completion that you can have, like whether there's metadata at all, is it standardized, is it also machine readable? So we could see if we can just formulate the questions more like follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
as you said, eliminate the questions that cannot be yes anymore because the previous question was no. So that's part of the logic and the dependencies between questions.
Yeah.
And we could also maybe decide to evaluate either a model or an archive at a time, so that would reduce the number of questions, because we would only ask for archive or model. So you have basically half the questions left. You don't double them.
Oh yeah. Yes, that actually would help. Like if I'm going through a bunch of questions, like I'm having to spend mental energy being like, oh wait, we're talking about the archive. Oh wait, we're talking about the model. And if all the model questions were together and then all the archive questions, that would be really helpful for my brain.
We could have 4 sections actually.
Yeah.
One for model, one for archive, one for model metadata, one for archive.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Oh Lord, include references to other metadata of the archive. What? Metadata of the archive includes references to other metadata of archive. What?
No, that's something that we want to check if it's needed.
Okay.
Basically, at some point it can be, I have one archive and you have one archive, and the archive I have developed uses some common parameters, settings, data, common strategies. I don't know exactly. And in my archive, at some point in the metadata, I put, okay, this is adapted from the model from Lucian or from the archive from Lucian, and you have more description of archive from Lucian here. So this is something that a little bit kind of puts the object, the digital object, the archive, the model, and so on in the context, connects with this. It is the case in the traditional data set, saying that, okay, this is a genomics data and a transcriptomic data set, it's available somewhere else or something, so in the metadata. We are not exactly sure if it's relevant here or if it should be removed. So it's with a little bit of question mark. And then it's the metadata of a model.
First of all, just the grammar of this needs to be fixed. So the metadata of the archive indicates references to the metadata of other archives. Of separate archives or something. Like if we're talking about external references, I did not get that from the grammar of that sentence. The other thing is, because I can imagine like I grabbed your model and now I'm modifying it or I'm combining it with something else and I want to preserve that history.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think I would make that I would make that sort of one of those NA things. Like I would ask a question like, does this model come from other models? And if so, like, did you indicate that? And if it doesn't, I don't think I would penalize you, or like, I don't think it makes it less fair or more fair. I think it makes it more fair if it does reference something else to reference it. But I think if it doesn't reference anything, I've created this from scratch.
But that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
If I don't need reference to
Right.
external things, I would say 0. I don't have that.
Applicable. Ron, this is not applicable if we don't.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
but I think I would do the NA thing, right?
Okay, good.
We don't need. Perhaps this one indeed, metadata of archive includes references to our metadata of archive can be removed, and then we keep the third one. So it's the metadata of archive includes reference to our data. This means whatever models, archives, and so on. So I'm not sure, but
Like all, yeah.
sorry. But the information is
Go ahead.
kept in data itself. Because later, after that, you have archive includes references to our data, which means model or archive. So basically, the information is kept somewhere in the archive itself, perhaps not necessarily relevant, but for example, the model includes reference to our data saying that, okay, there are some other models, DOI, PubMed, I'm not sure exactly, or even publication and so on. So this is a set that we wanted feedback more.
Okay. I think on a questionnaire like this, I would first ask like what does it reference, or does it come from something? Is it a version of someone else's model? Have I collected data from someone else? And then for anything that I say that it is, then I would say like, did you reference it? Did you have clear references to that data? And I think, and otherwise I would just sort of automatically fill in NAs for all these. And I would, if it's, there might be different types of NAs. I feel like there's some NAs that actually change the FAIR score, but others that don't. And I would assume that these would not affect any FAIR score, even the general one. I'm trying to think if there was, it would sort of be better to, but yeah.
If I add an external reference to my thank you note, I would
Suddenly be, yeah. Yeah, like you do want to make sure. I'm like, as much as you claim to not want this to be a competition, it is 100% a competition. It will always be a competition, and people will then try to game the system. They will add in random references just to get a score of 1 on something where they otherwise would be an NA, and you don't want to you don't want to reward that kind of behavior. Oh, now here's one. Model includes references to other data. Like, what's the difference between a 0 and an NA, right? Like, it should, but it doesn't, or it just shouldn't.
Are there other models that are actually related to the model I'm actually relating now? Yes. Are there references? If
Okay.
no, then you have 0.
Then,
but if there is no model, if you are
yeah,
isolated, then it's not applicable.
Okay.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
But does it actually happen that the model is completely isolated whatsoever from any other experiment?
I mean, it's a tech in general, I would think that, like, especially early on, that was more the case, and it's less the case now. But like, I don't think biomodels 1 is any less fair than biomodels 500, because biomodels 1 was the first one, and biomodels 500 like can reference other things.
You improve the fairness of biomodels 1 by adding references to biomodels 500.
Oh, it was used in.
Yes, fine. Well, for example.
There are models without data, like theoretical switches and networks, something like that.
Yeah.
There is no data.
Yeah, there's no data.
So if I simulate a model and add the simulation data to the archive, I suddenly have data for my model. Am I more?
Yeah, is that suddenly more fair or not? Okay.
You always come back to the competition thing you mentioned.
Right.
And you could have people doing experiment 1, which is completely isolated, and then say, okay, let's do experiment 2, to another date. No reference each other.
Right, yeah. Now I'm better. Yeah. Includes references to other data. The archive includes references to other data.
I assume going, at some point, they'll have to have a third party assess the scores. Keep self-assessment.
Yeah, but even then, that doesn't help you. Like, I just add a random reference externally so that I have an external reference. It's like a third party would be like, yep, you did that. 1.
I don't remember if in the automated, if that's, I think that one is automated, I don't remember if they check what is on the other side of the difference.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe they do. But,
like ideally you would, I guess. I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to think of examples where the archive includes references to the other data, and that's different from the model including references to other data, or like models, at least SVML models tend to be self-contained, like you can't reference data from a model other than in like the annotations.
Layout, you can reference another picture.
Okay. So the layout things are more fair because they reference external pictures.
I mean, in the notes, you can have a link to some websites.
Yeah.
You include the data used parameters.
Yeah, but the parameter, I mean, that's a SetML thing. That's not a model thing. That's just, oh, unless you have parameterized the model and now I
They saying here's a model and
it was parameterized by this parameter estimation task, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna put NA for those also.
This was not getting better because
It's so weird. Include that. Like the applicable ones might, oh yeah, the applicable ones should, the more I click NA, the more higher the applicable
Yes.
score should go, right? Yeah,
yes, because they get removed from the list of.
yeah. Unless it already wasn't on the list because there was no answer, but anyway. Metadata of the model includes references to other metadata of the model. There's just internal references.
Yes.
I'm not sure about this one either. I don't know what that here. I guess I'll click on it. What does that mean? Did I click on it? Oh, another random thing. I would put a little blue eye for more information instead of, because you had to tell me click on the thing. Like I can click on the thing. So yeah.
I noted that also.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Sure. About the way that the model metadata is connected. There's a extra space in here.
Yes.
Okay.
That is randomly. Yeah, my fault.
No, it is
the,
like, yeah.
the text beforehand.
A link. I don't understand this, I guess. For example, the links to information about organizations. Is it like a link to, like if I link to an ontology that and that ontology has more information, then that counts for this? I'm not. I don't know.
We have the same
People play this.
problem as before, like with the archive.
Are you looking at the metadata of model include the qualified reference?
No, I'm looking at this one. Metadata of the model includes references to other metadata of the model.
Like self-referencing, or is it referencing a different model?
Yeah, I think there is an issue. Grammar does not the
Oh.
question does not correspond to what the description is.
Yeah, that question doesn't go in this
Yeah.
description, and this description is also confusing because I don't know how.
Maybe to other metadata. So I guess if there are ontologies and links to ontologies, I guess this would work.
Okay, I don't know what the
don't
intent
know.
of this one
I
is
don't know.
either. Yeah,
That's something to discuss.
okay. This also feels really. We're getting really in the weeds with this sort of thing, and I don't know if. Like, I don't know if you're actually improving your model by like. Answering 1 or 0 to this thing. Or even more fair.
Are we there yet?
We are right here on the scroll bar, right? So we have this many.
You are I, right? So only R afterwards.
Yeah. So we're in the eyes. And we have a few R's also. All right.
There's pizza for this.
There's like the good thing you gave us pizza. Oh my goodness.
So I don't mind, guys. I don't if we just stop here and maybe you try to go through the.
No, is there
survey.
something else that would
I
also be
promise
helpful?
it's shorter.
We have time. I'm happy to do this if this
No,
continues to be helpful. But if there's something different that would be more helpful, I'm also happy to switch.
This is great. I mean, I probably 84 is too much, so you can safely remove the ones that make less sense, and you'll have a higher density of good.
Of good questions, yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is really
So
great.
ordering them and like
Condensing them,
collate them.
yeah, like making the dependencies
different
good.
Topics
Yeah.
so that user can finish one and then click next, and
Yeah.
then interoperability is loaded so that I'm not seeing the long.
Yes.
So-
Yeah, makes sense.
Also the indication of important, useful, important. This is the first thing I see, important, useful, important. And I'm not sure if it's that important information, how you classify the question. Like, would it be better to get rid of the really present, important, useful things and just indicate it on the right side if I click on it? I mean, for me, it doesn't make any difference if you say this question is important, because I click to every question anyway.
I could imagine like if you organize them by importance, then you might say like, if you don't have a lot of time, just answer the important ones, right? And then like, if you have a little bit more time, do the useful ones. And if you have even more time, answer all the piddly detailed question ones.
Because
Or
for me,
something.
it doesn't tell me anything. If you say this is important, it's useful, and so on and so on. There's no information gained from me except.
Oh yeah, by tagging each individual question, yeah.
Maybe it would make a difference if it's corresponding to the subscores, to the essential, non-essential, applicable. Should maybe instead of important, it should probably say applicable. Does this make sense?
Don't tell me, otherwise I start optimizing.
Or let me optimize and like actually make. Like I do actually feel like I would weight the score and I would weight the important questions higher than the useful questions. I think I would go through and try to figure out a good balance thing where people could like answer all the important questions and get a reasonable assessment of their overall of their fairness, even if they don't answer all the other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, so that you mean in a sense that let's say you answer all essential questions.
Right.
One for all of these it works.
And I would expect if I answered all the essential questions with one, I would expect a score of 85%, I think. And if I didn't answer any other questions, or something like that, you know. And then I could go through all the non-essential questions and like bump it, like start creeping it up from 85 to 90 or something, right? I don't know what a good balance is for that, but I think, but if they actually are important, I would make them important in the score.
Yes.
Like if I, again, like I know you don't want people to game the system, but people are going to game the system, and they're going to game the system by answering all the non-essential ones by answering what they can easily do, and then suddenly they're more fair than something where all the important, even though all the important things are actually 0 or something. But
Also, if it's not answered, that doesn't count against the score.
it depends. Like I would count against the score for the important ones if you don't answer, right?
The other
But
ones.
maybe not.
The other
Yeah.
ones can just tick your score up, but like not answering doesn't do anything.
Like that means it's better to not answer than to say 0.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That seems. That's another weird optimization.
Right, exactly.
The answer depends on your viewpoint, right? If you think that's not useful for my model, I would say not applicable.
Yeah,
If I have in mind that it's useful for my model, but I don't have it, I would have to answer 0. So
Yeah.
I always would say, that's not necessary for my model and say not applicable.
yeah.
Gaming the system, same idea.
Right, right. And again, like you have to, like an objective third party answering the question might give you a different answer or something. And self-assessments are always going to be higher than objective assessments, but on a completely different note, I just want to mention Lily in our lab wrote a review about reproducibility, credibility analysis, and comparing it to other fields. So like looking at credibility assessments of models from NASA, credibility assessments of models or from the FDA. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of interesting things that are not captured here that I think might be in the some of the questions that are in those things are not applicable to this domain, but many of them would be, and I think would still fall under FAIR specifically, at least the R part of that. And they're interesting things that I wouldn't have thought of before, like is the applicability of this model expressly stated? Like basically like is the range of places that I can use this model like stated? One of the problems with one of the shuttle disasters was that they used the model of the heat shields to try to see if they would survive, but the model was not made to be applicable in those extreme environments. The model was made in a different environment, so it wasn't really applicable, and they didn't realize that in time. So that sort of thing, and it's very like you're never going to automate that. But if you're having people answer questions anyway, those would be really interesting questions to add to this sort of thing.
You're not gonna automate.
Like
You could automate it, I think.
like I don't know a good way to say
It's
like
not validation data.
yeah,
That data dictates the scope of
the scope of the thing. Yeah.
outside that, we can't guarantee.
So is there validation data and is there a range of the
Right.
validation data?
Can't
Yeah.
guarantee it.
Okay. Yeah.
You
Okay.
have to expose, like, in this case would be like, you have to expose the temperature variable, right?
Right. Say
It's
like
valid
within this range.
normal temperatures.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very interesting work for us here, because our renewal on the center is actually half focus at least is on model credibility. Because it's something of growing interest in the US and obviously in Europe. And with the rise, of the digital twin, it's going to become even more important. It will unleash these things on patients. You need to have some way to assess credibility. And this happened during COVID, actually, because the models, in terms of credibility, were pretty weak. Although in the end, they did do reasonable predictions. But at the time, they looked pretty rough. Like the Imperial model was just 15,000 lines of code in a single file without having testing. So we're interested in trying to automate any aspects of model credibility. One of the things we could do, the models are expressed in standards like SAML or SPML. You can do deep dives into the model, look at things like, well, the physical laws they use, are they reasonable? Or are there any mistakes they made in the parameters? Say, for example, if Michaela's mentioned equation, they use the Km instead of the Vmax as the symbol. They just never noticed that. You can check for, mistakes, things like that as well, which is useful for doing the development of a model. And this could report then can be provided to the final model to increase the credibility of the model.
So, is there a plan to do this as a part of?
This is the first time I've seen this, so maybe others have seen this before, but for me it wasn't. So this is really important, and we'd probably like to work with you guys to get the renewal, to work with you to add this to the list of things.
Yeah.
Because you're working on a more meta level, which we haven't really considered. We're more working at the deep dive model. actually get into the model itself and the assumptions that
Yeah,
are made,
yeah.
the equations they're using, level of validation data they have, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Can we have a quick talk about who is going to answer this question? It's no, I mean seriously.
Yeah.
If that's
No, you're right.
the review process, like I'm submitting a model to biomodels at PMR2, and David will sit there and answer all the questions. He will be upset, but you will get like objective answers.
Yeah.
Which will be fine, or can I just sit there, get the model and give my score, and then the overall estimated score of the model raises somehow? So what is the idea?
I mean,
Where to use,
Wait.
where to implement it?
ultimately, I think you're going to have to automate it somehow, because it's not scalable.
At least 95% probably.
Automated, yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we would see it as once pulled with PMI.
Yeah.
Part of the submission process of the model then.
Yeah, if you'd like it to be automated, at that point, rather than the user having to click.
But you can imagine, you know, that are saying that we can produce those different worlds.
Journal.
That's it. There are some
Journal.
questions there that you cannot fully avoid.
But we could include this, and we thought that would be a one thing.
By the way, the journals are very reluctant to do this kind of thing.
Sorry?
Journals are very reluctant to.
Anything in the way of the author. So this has to be done either automated or done at other places like biomodels and PLRs.
So one thing that I mentioned briefly the other day, the new journal website, that pulling out and this metadata from manuscript. Part of that could be for metadata that's like go in a more standardized way that come through there.
Yeah.
We can put
Another general comment I'm realizing. If I am answering this question for my model, or if I'm trying to improve the fairness of my model, I want to know, I want to have my score of the things that I control, and I want to have biomodels scores separate. Right? I want the fact that I uploaded it to biomodels to just give me a 83 or something, and then I want everything that I do to be separate, so I can like assess what I can do to increase the fairness of the model. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I chose biomodels as its site. Like overall, if someone else is using it, I can see like a combined score makes sense. But I want to see what my part of it is. And then I can say like, I got my part up to 100%, like the fact that I put it at biomodels, dropped it down to 84, but that's not that like, now I can just bug biomodels about for a while and not have to worry about.
That's back to the initial question. Are we
Yeah.
evaluating the repository with the model,
Yeah.
or are we evaluating my file somehow?
Right. And a lot of the evaluations are evaluation of the repository.
Yeah.
Which is fine, and it's totally appropriate for things. But the only choice I made was I am going to send it to biomodels, and that's it, right? And that's
by choice.
right, the journal, yeah.
And you want it somewhere else.
Yeah. And then presumably there is no repository that would give you 100% score for their bits, right? We're just coming up with these assessments, and they're in the middle of trying to get better. My model, I put it on biomodels, and over time my score goes up because biomodels improves, or goes down because biomodels dies, or whatever. Yeah. But it would be just useful on a, like I instinctively want to know what can I change, and what do I have control over and what do I not.
I think that's also one of the next steps that we were also discussing. Once you have your score, it would be really nice to get a feedback, so you get a feedback for, or you can easily divide the scores. What score did you reach in FAIR? But it would also be really nice to do some analysis of the results and see, for example, your score is so low because you just fail with all the metadata. So maybe put some time into metadata and read the metadata Miriam spec to know what you need to do, or maybe
Yeah,
even give concrete suggestions. So that's what we discussed.
Some suggestions for some easy wins would be great, right? Like I would go through this and you get a score of this. The easiest thing that you could do to improve your score is to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So the typical example is people not having a license when they publish their data. So then, I mean, that's a very easy one because it's one question about the license. If people cross no, select no, they don't have a license, and usually you can just suggest them to add a license, and that will give you an increase of, I don't know, 15% in the reusability score. So that's something people like to do because this tool helped me to increase my score by 15%. It's really nice.
Yeah.
But it's just one question. But this is trivial. There's more complex things.
I would set up your weighting to like give people wins, you know, like people are going to game the system, you can game them too, right back. Like if you want to, if it would be easy for them to give a license and like increase their score by 10%, like just make that. They're like, this is a really easy thing to do and it's worth 10% of your score. Like I'm going to do that, right? A lot of the finicky details you can make, or anything you want to, you have the opportunity here to really push people in particular ways to improve their model by what you choose to give a lot of credence to. So I would make, if you don't think about it, you will be pushing people in ways that you didn't think about, because you will be pushing people in some ways. So I would just think about it and say, like, what do we want to push people, and let's weight that the most.
And actually, the pushing also depends a lot on the domain. Like in the clinic where I am located now, I would really like to see the use of some of the well-established simulation models in the clinical domain for, I don't know, decision support or prediction of disease progression, for example. And it could be really interesting to develop a scoring tool like this, specifically for people who want to check what do I need to do to offer my model to a clinician? Like, what would be the expected score in the different classes of principles here? What is the minimum that I need to reach for all these FAIR to be on a good way to get my model accepted as a medical product, for example. So I see a lot of potential in that direction, but I don't really have a clue how to do it. So FAIR is the first step, and then would be really interesting to have a project and develop a similar scoring system that guides people towards getting their models into the clinic, for example.
Okay.
Just if anyone is interested to write a grant proposal. And spend a few years.
Right. I mean, like sometimes there's supplementary grants, you like on the center or something, you can imagine little projects like that or something. Yeah. Herbert's nodding.
I can nod because they're pretty rare. So.
All right, let's see if we can crank through the rest of these.
But by the way, I discovered that there's well, funding agency in Germany, DFG, is it? DFG. There's now a joint program, DFG and NSF. So, if you're interested in something, try that. They started last year, I think. They have one with the UK. Now I see there's one with Germany as well.
Oh, the BBS.
The UK one is BBS, that's the
right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so keep that in mind.
Can you post the link?
No.
Okay.
Whoever just looked it up.
Post the link. My brain, I Let me see if I can find it. Here we go.
So let me evaluate the fairness of your information that you
Of your neurons.
There we go. Okay, first link. Just type DFG NSF joint.
Lucian, I need a translation.
The metadata
Ah,
is rich-
okay.
What's that?
The metadata
Yeah.
is rich enough. Go free.
Yeah. Yeah, there's dear colleague letter. So, oh, there's various other ones though. Okay, that's about. There's one in biology, bioinformatics, or something. So, let's see.
So there's other ones. Dear colleague letter.
Yeah, here's one. I found it between opportunity in molecular and cell biology. So, okay, there's that one. You can find other ones that you might match up. I don't think the NIH has anything like this, so it can't be medical. If you do anything like this, with NSF, it can't be medical, right?
Yeah.
Must be basic research, but it can be basic research in humans, but it's just not to do with any medicine.
So no translation. You
Nope.
mean no translation into the clinic, just
Can't
basic.
mention the word medicine. Can't. The reason is because the NSF is like 40 billion. Sorry, NIH is 40 billion. They do all the medical stuff. NSF is like 8 billion. They confine themselves to non-medical research.
Like, if you want to do medical stuff, there is a better funded agency that we will send you to. Don't take our money. Also do more medicine. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna slip down to reusability, just in the interest of time and sanity. Oh, hey, you did all of this for me. You put on a bunch of ones because the biomodels automatically has licenses, apparently.
Yes. So when you publish in biomodels, you have a license.
Yes, I hope to actually at some point add about in there.
Okay.
I have an attribute for that, but I do not have added anything to fill the message, but yeah.
Okay. I don't know if this is 1.1 and the next one is just 1, but anyway.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's license is
probably,
probably that.
I'm actually wondering if it could be because of lags, so that you get actually for some reason the 1.1 before the 1, and so it adds them in the maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the case actually. I
Oh,
only
and there's one, and then there's 1.3.
That's how much is-
Yeah.
1.1, 1.3, well, and then there's 1.2. So
I only
yeah, I don't know.
only add everything to an array basically. And the first one that comes in gets added as first. So maybe we should look at it. Yeah.
Plurality of accurate and relevant attributes of model are provided to allow reuse. I do not know what you could possibly be my plurality here. So the indicator concerns the quality, but also quantity, but also the quality of the metadata provided in order to enhance data reusability. I still don't know. Yeah, do you mean that you want us to use multiple ontologies? That's my only guess. Otherwise, I don't know what that is. There's an extra space randomly. Oh, and then there's there's the same question about the archive, which I think, I don't know if that's a reasonable thing, but maybe. Anyway, all right. I don't know what that is. Archive complies with the community standard, like it is an OMX file. All right, sure, it's OMX. Metadata is metadata RDF. Yep. Yep, machines can read RDF. It's all one file. It's still RDF. Yeah, like, I think we are moving towards having a single metadata.rdf file that would have both archive and model information in it. Okay, I feel like I'm being asked the same question a bunch.
Hmm.
Maybe these are slightly different from each other, but I don't,
Yeah.
like at first blush, I'm like, didn't I already answer this? But I guess that there's probably some nuance here.
Yeah, that's the thing that I mentioned earlier. You have the same question, and you could also imagine to have just one question, and then on the right-hand side have some kind of degree of fulfillment. So you could
Yeah.
just ask, is metadata of the archive expressed in a standard format? And then on the right-hand side, yes, it's even machine understandable. Yes, it's even cross-community accepted. Yes. So it's different levels that you reach.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But
that would
then,
make that more clear.
the scoring, we also have to check the scoring, because if you match one of these, you probably match the 4 previous questions, but you don't want 5 times the score into your total score, because it's the same fact, just that you're like if you have your metadata in a cross-community machine readable standard, that's like the highest level you can reach, but it includes the previous questions.
Yeah.
So we
Although
have
you
to
should
think
get
about
more,
this
you should still get more points for that, but or more, some sort of a more
Yes,
higher
but
score. But
you
yeah,
shouldn't get the point like for all 5 questions. It could also be just like one
Hmm.
question, and you get 1 to 5 points depending on the level of
yeah, I like it.
fulfillment.
Machine understandable community metadata. Oh yeah, this is like the difference between the archive and the metadata of the model, and the model itself, the metadata of the archive, and the model itself. Okay, great. Yep, I'm totally compliant there.
Okay.
I'm waiting for your
Yep. Okay,
I'm
got
waiting
it.
for your timeout when you submit this.
Like, it was like, sorry, it is timed out. Okay.
It took too long.
No, you song. Data of the archive includes provenance information according to community specific standards. Ah, like where, okay. Sure.
Probably not. I'm not sure actually, but we don't need to discuss now. But
Okay.
I don't think there's much
I feel like the
provenance
provenance might be, yeah, sort of the same.
in archives. And also the model doesn't really include much provenance information, the metadata.
Okay.
I think there's room for improvements in both specifications,
These sort of
actually.
scores, yeah.
But
Okay.
never mind. It's a self-assessment.
Getting up to 52. I got over 50%, so I'm happy. I got higher than non-essential ones. That's funny.
It would also be interesting if we ever run this tool online to tell you how much better or worse you are than the average person who took the survey. So actually, most people that we do fair assessment with, no matter which community, whether it's like health informatics or combine, they end up around 50. So between 50 and 65, I think is where most people end up. It's really interesting to see.
To see that just sort of naturally fall out there.
So there's a peak.
Well, I skipped a bunch of this sort of like
maybe you
talked about them, didn't actually answer them, but yeah. All right.
Okay,
well,
so we
cool.
got definitely too many questions, and the questions are too repetitive. Do you say that? So too much repetition of felt repetition. I mean, they are all very different when you discuss with RDA people, but I think for average users, they are too similar and can be simplified probably.
Could be simplified, combine some, or maybe like or separated so that the very similar questions aren't right next to each other. So I have to be like, what's the difference between this question and the previous one? Like if I'm thinking about the archive and then thinking about the model, then the similar question shows up in each section. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you need to decide today to do one or the other, and then
or even just have two sections and do one and then the next or whatever. Just if I only have to code switch once in my head, then it's easier to answer all the questions that way, I think.
Yeah. And it's only half the questions. That's also psychological.
There's many questions, yeah. And some of them could be combined, like if I say I have a metadata file for both the archive and the model, then all my questions about the format of that metadata file can just be, I only have to answer them once. If I tell you some information about like how I'm storing this information. So
yeah.
Whew.
Should the questions themselves be more adapted to the context? Should there be some explanation about what this question means for biomodels, for example? Because especially at the beginning, we discussed a lot about the questions and what they actually mean.
Everything that is answerable about biomodels, the only question you need to ask me is your model at biomodels? And then that's it, right?
The thing is that the question for me should be the exact same thing, whether the resource is in biomodel or PMR or anywhere else. But yeah, we could, because it is in biomodel, it's automatically answered as yes or no.
Right.
There should be a comment saying biomodel, due to the fact that it is in biomodel, you automatically get, I don't know, an identifier, or
and just collapse all those questions, you know, like just if you want to see what they are, you can open this list and see what all the things are, and then you can complain to biomodels about other zeros because your model now is 86 and not an 87, but yeah, like just have it like the information, all the information you need from me is it in biomodels, and maybe is it in the curated branch? You get a little bit more information about that. I don't know if any of your questions ended up actually being different from the curated versus non-curated, but it would be that's an easy question to ask me. Is it in the curated branch? And if you can get some information out of that, then that's great. Here we are. Oh,
I don't know.
you claimed you were going to do your quick wrap up at the end and be like,
I don't claim anything, I'm asking.
oh, is that like
Pizza's not outside yet.
pizza's not outside yet, so yeah, do your wrap up thing.
So you still didn't have your pizza, is that right? Didn't you? You still didn't
Oh,
have
it's just not here yet. It's due it's due in another 10 to 25 minutes. So
because actually Irina and I also got pizza for tonight because we thought it's very funny to eat it with you. But to be honest, mine is already gone. And also Irina is gone. Yeah. No, but I think that was a really nice session, and even if it took long to go through the indicators, it was much quicker than last time, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And as we said, we need to shorten the questions, but I at least from what I've heard, it's not, I mean, it seems to be a useful tool that people might want to try out if it doesn't take ages.
Right.
To get a feeling for the fairness of their models.
It has a very clear use, and I think if you could get it to be easy, the easier you can get it to use, and the easier you can, and the more like you can advertise, in order you can let people advertise what their score is, the more use it's going to get. You know, like you can, I don't know, like say that if you get a 65, you get a star, and if you get a 75, you get a 2 stars, and or whatever, you know, and then the people love like saying like this is a 3-star model or whatever. Yeah.
So I shared the link with you.
100% you get the you're a liar star. Yeah.
I shared the link. I shared the link on the chat And that's a very simple, so there's really simple tools that we've been looking at. And there you can do the evaluation in 5 minutes, basically. So there is a trade-off between doing a very generic, like basically just waving your hand and saying fair is important thing. That's what the satisfied does. It's very high level, very coarse grained. And at the other end is probably what we did to comply really with the recommendations by the RDA, by the Research Data Alliance, and do a really thorough and detailed evaluation to make sure that that you cover all the details of the FAIR principles. And the question is, where is the middle ground? Because there's a more coarse-grained your questions get, the less information you get from the evaluation, and the less feedback you can also give for people on what to improve.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the big challenges in this project, to identify the optimum level of detail. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a paper on this? Or no?
I think there have been some papers.
On this stuff you were talking about?
There's been FAIR papers in general.
There is one, I think, preparation, but the tool needs to be finished first.
Yeah.
No, but I'm supposed to be talking about credibility in end of June. And I'm trying to draw up. This is an important area.
Yeah.
So if I can find somehow from your work, see, look, Europe is all, people in Europe are also. Yes. I think we should be. But then you have.
And any links to these sorts of things where Herbert would love them, so you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I keep that in
Do your
mind.
summary?
I actually first wanted to ask, you
Yeah.
mentioned the paper of the researcher in your lab.
Yes.
Do you have metadata for me to find it?
I was actually like trying to find it myself earlier. It was submitted, but it's on bioarchive, I think, or Lily's review paper.
Yeah, it's been submitted, it's under review, but the copy somewhere.
Right.
On
Overleaf.
Here, I will search for this. Yeah, it's on Overleaf right now, but
It must be on archive, you're gonna search for it on, yeah.
yeah, I was gonna search for it on archive. Hey, look at that.
It found the Overleaf.
It found archive.org. Yep. All right. Shoot, there we go. Okay, we'll put that there, and I will also put it on the Combine Slack. Oops, not that one.
And you're writing the next one, Robert?
Next one. I am.
Apparently.
Doing a 50th anniversary of MCA. After me and Frank Brugman are writing, well, I'll be writing the introduction. Done by the end of May.
Now, do you want to do your summary?
He's gonna wait for the printed
I'm like, oh, you're clearly like, like, I don't want to do the summary.
I don't know.
It's fine.
What can I say? Well, first, thank you for all the comments, the feedback. Both for the indicators, there were a lot of comments for the indicators themselves. It will be really helpful to actually streamline the process, I think. Also the feedback for the tool itself regarding the front end. Really appreciate the feedback for that, because yeah, user experience is
Yeah,
really
kind of
a
invaluable.
complex matter, and
Yeah.
yeah, it can really help improving on that. Yeah, we didn't have the time sadly to work on the tasks themselves, but that's fine. We need to finalize the indicators first for that anyway. Yeah, what else did I say? Do you have any comments? No. No.
I like the 3-hour live demo.
Sorry.
3-hour live demo.
Yes, but it's actually, I actually have an external battery. So,
But also the server didn't crash, which means the backend is well programmed and also the front end.
It's true.
All the errors.
It's true. Tom and I did a really good job on that. I think nothing crashed. There were some that, of course, but that's fast on par for the course. I think it was expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing blew up. That's actually incredible. I expected, honestly, I expected to at least have to relaunch once after a quick correction. It didn't happen. So it's actually impressive. I don't know. Dagmar, do you want to add something?
No, I can report that I fixed my camera. Great.
Oh,
Great session. And yeah, thank you also from my side, definitely. And I guess we will be back at the next meeting. And yeah, and torture you again with these indicators. But yeah, it was really good to get the feedback today. And I think the project is on a good way. And hopefully we can get it running until the next meeting. Would be cool.
sounds good. Yeah, definitely seems valuable. Good job.
If you have any further comments, Ron and Francois will be there until the end of the Harmony meeting. And I think you can also run more tool tests if you want, if you haven't had enough.
Record yourself going grrr as filling out everything. All right. Thanks a lot. I will hit stop,
Thanks
but I
a
will
lot.
leave this running.
Yeah.
See you all later.
See you.
See you.